Inside the Tianhao Hotel, Li Jinfei stands over a sleeping target, camera in hand for a high-stakes mission. She adjusts her focus, capturing the perfect angle of the man resting in the presidential suite. With a sharp click of the shutter, she secures the first piece of evidence for her secret assignment. However, she can't help but feel a wave of anxiety about the unprofessional state of her target. Her mind flashes back to the meeting, where she was first recruited for this undercover operation. She reviews the confidential check-in details for He Yuan, the man she's been tasked to frame. The mysterious client promised that this staged affair would cover all of her mother's rising medical costs. Stealing her nerves, Jinfei reminds herself that she is doing this solely for her family's future. She realizes that his current state makes the technical aspects of her photography mission much more complicated. Pushing her doubts aside, she decides to ignore the awkwardness and finish the job immediately. She cautiously reaches out to adjust the environment for a more believable staged photo. Positioning herself for a selfie, she tries to create a scene that looks like a close personal encounter. Examining the digital display, she worries the framing isn't convincing enough to fool anyone. She leans in closer, attempting to capture a more detailed shot for her clients. The situation takes a turn for the worse when He Yuan begins to move in his sleep. Jinfei holds her breath, finding herself far too close to the target as he starts to wake. Thinking she's finally captured the necessary footage, she prepares to make a hasty retreat. Suddenly, a powerful hand snaps around her wrist, halting her escape with ironclad strength. Jinfei recoils in pure shock as she is yanked back toward the bed by the waking man. She struggles with all her might, desperately trying to snatch her camera back from his grasp. He Yuan fixes her with an icy stare, making it clear he isn't fooled by her amateur tactics. He looms over her with a cold smirk, thoroughly enjoying her visible panic. He mocks her efforts, stating that these poorly composed photos will never pass as a real scandal. Jinfei's face burns with shame as she realizes her entire plan has backfired spectacularly. He Yuan offers a taunting proposal, suggesting he could help her make the scene more authentic. Terrified, Jinfei pleads for him to release her so she can leave this nightmare behind. She lashes out verbally, calling him out for his intimidating behavior. He ignores her protests, keeping a firm hold on her to ensure she doesn't flee the room. In one swift motion, he pins her to the mattress to maintain complete control over the situation. Jinfei stares up at him in frozen silence, realizing she's become the one trapped in her own schemes. Сцена пропущена через помилки генерації API або провалу валідації. After narrowly escaping the hotel room, Jinfei navigates the busy streets, hoping to vanish into the morning crowd. Her heart stops when she notices her own face plastered across a massive digital billboard with a wanted warning. Frustration boils over as she curses the man responsible for making her a public target so quickly. Suddenly, a sleek luxury vehicle screeches to a violent halt right in the middle of the plaza. Professional security teams flood out of the car, barking orders to lock down the entire perimeter. The men show no mercy, aggressively questioning every passerby who remotely matches Jinfei's description. One guard demands that a young woman remove her glasses to confirm she isn't the fugitive they're looking for. Jinfei spots the distinctive golden eagle crest on the guard's uniform, the unmistakable mark of the powerful He family. Reality hits her like a physical blow as she realizes the sheer scale of the manhunt He Yuan has launched. She knows she can't outrun them forever, and must find a tactical way to break through their tightening net. Keeping her head down, she attempts to lose herself among the sea of unsuspecting shoppers to avoid detection. The lead agent coordinates the search through his radio, refusing to let his target slip away from the scene. Panic flares as the guards spot a glimpse of her and immediately give chase through the bustling square. Jinfei pushes her body to the limit, gasping for air while cursing He Yuan's name with every desperate step. Her eyes dart around frantically, searching for any possible exit to evade her relentless pursuers. She catches sight of a massive shopping mall nearby, offering a potential maze of corridors and shops. A clever idea takes hold of her as a confident smirk plays across her lips. Ducking into a boutique, she finds the perfect sanctuary to execute her sudden transformation. She uses a cosmetic kit to expertly apply freckles and alter her facial features beyond recognition. The security team storms the area, completely unaware that their target is hiding in plain sight just feet away. Disguised as an expectant mother in a vibrant green dress, she calmly strolls past the very men hunting her. Behind her oversized shades, Jinfei revels in the absolute success of her quick-thinking camouflage. She mocks their incompetence, knowing they would never suspect a woman of her current appearance. However, her vanity briefly takes over as she can't help but admire how beautiful her disguise actually looks. Snapping back to reality, she adjusts her outfit and prepares to make her final, quiet exit from the mall. Li Jinfei recalls how her life took a sharp turn when she accepted that fateful undercover mission. Her carefully laid plans crumbled instantly when the target caught her in the act. He Yuan's men quickly flooded the streets, turning her into a wanted fugitive. She narrowly escaped their grasp, gasping for breath as she fled through the city. A clever pregnancy disguise allowed her to slip right past the guards unnoticed. Despite her escape, she returned to find a termination notice waiting at her workplace. 1 week later, she arrives at Shengguang Building, determined to land a new job. Passersby can't help but stare as she walks confidently toward the entrance. She hangs up her phone just as the elevator arrives with a sharp chime. With a quick goodbye to her friend, she prepares to step inside. She reaches out a hand to stop the closing doors just in time. Jinfei rushes into the crowded lift, Eager to reach her interview floor, she offers a polite thanks to the man who held the door for her. Her heart stops when she finally looks up at the man standing beside her. To her horror, Hee-yuan is looming right there in the confined space. She panics internally, desperately wishing the elevator would move faster. The floor indicator slowly ticks upward as she tries to remain invisible. Suddenly, Hee-yuan's iron grip snaps around her arm, pinning her against the wall. She glares up at him, demanding he release her at once. Hee-yuan mocks her, suggesting her resistance is just a ploy to get his attention. He leans in with intense focus, closing the distance between them. Jinfei freezes in shock as he catches her off guard yet again. He maintains his domineering stance, leaving her with no room to escape. Shoving him back with all her strength, she finally breaks his hold. She storms out the moment the doors open, cursing his name. Hee-yuan watches her departure with a dark, satisfied smirk. He finds her fiery spirit far more intriguing than he expected. Jinfei finally makes it to the meeting room for her scheduled interview. The interviewer stares her down coldly and immediately dismisses her. Confused, Jinfei points out that the interview hasn't even started. The woman snaps at her, demanding she leave the premises immediately. Feeling defeated, Jinfei gathers her things to make a quiet exit. The interviewer warns her that social climbers like her will never reach Hee-yuan. She mocks Jinfei's efforts, claiming the CEO has zero interest in women. Jinfei realizes with a shudder that Hee-yuan is the shadow ruining her life. The memory of Hee-yuan's overwhelming presence in the elevator still haunts Jinfei's mind. Back in the real world, the cold-hearted interviewer watches her with zero sympathy. Adjusting her glasses, the woman delivers the final blow, ordering Jinfei to get out. Seeking solace, Jinfei heads straight to the hospital where her mother is recovering. She pauses at the entrance, taking a deep breath to mask her frustration before entering. Jinfei walks into the quiet room, greeted by the sight of her mother resting in the hospital bed. The older woman looks up in surprise, not expecting her daughter to visit so early in the day. She immediately asks how the high-stakes job interview went, hoping for a miracle. Forcing a smile, Jinfei sets down a gift and prepares to tell a comforting lie. She strikes a confident pose, claiming she's so talented that companies are practically fighting to hire her. Her performance is interrupted by a sudden, loud ringtone coming from her phone. She answers the call, her expression shifting as a mysterious recruiter speaks on the other end. Jinfei is left reeling in confusion after being offered a position at the company that just rejected her. Her mother watches closely, sensing the sudden tension radiating from her daughter. Jinfei quickly pivots, claiming the office just assigned her a very important first-day task. Internally, she knows she has no choice but to investigate this strange turn of events to pay the mounting medical bills. The next morning, she stands before the massive glass tower of the Shengguan Group. A stern assistant meets her at the entrance, handing over a thick folder of entry documents. He leads her deep into the corporate heart of the building, explaining her new professional duties. Jinfei's head spins as she realizes she's been hired as a personal secretary instead of a jewelry designer. They arrive at a set of imposing double doors that lead to the CEO's private office. The assistant directs her to go inside immediately and report to the president for her briefing. Hesitating, Jinfei mentions the rumors she's heard about the president's icy attitude toward female staff. The assistant confirms the rumors but notes that she was specifically hand-picked for this role. Jinfei tries to ask for more details, but the man is already walking away to attend to other business. Alone in the hallway, she stares at the door, wondering if she's walking straight into a trap. The memory of Hee-yuan's intense focus flashes back, making her heart race with professional anxiety. Pushing her doubts aside, she reaches out and firmly grips the handle to enter the room. Inside, a familiar, smug smile greets her from behind the massive executive desk. Jinfei's composure nearly breaks as she realizes her worst fear has come true. She stiffens her posture, introducing herself with forced professional courtesy. Hee-yuan stands to meet her, looming over her as the realization hits that there is no escape from his shadow. Standing in the shadows of his massive office, Hee-yuan towers over Jinfei with an overwhelming, dark presence. Jinfei's heart hammers against her ribs as she desperately tries to anticipate his next move. Forcing a polite smile, she clutches her documents and asks what professional tasks he has in mind for her. A confident smirk plays across his lips, signaling that he's thoroughly enjoying her discomfort. He suddenly reaches out to tilt her chin upward, demanding she maintain a specific aesthetic to suit his office standards. Reacting on pure instinct, Jinfei sharply swats his hand away to reestablish her personal boundaries. She pulls her folder tight against her chest, her confusion mounting as she tries to decipher his cryptic demands. Hee-yuan's gaze sharpens, his eyes locking onto hers with a look of mock surprise at her defiance. He leans in dangerously close, his voice dropping as he questions if she truly understands the nature of her new position. Sweat beads on her forehead as the sheer intensity of his proximity threatens to break her composure. Scrambling for space, she takes a frantic step backward to put some distance between them. Her heel loses its grip on the polished floor, sending her stumbling toward a disastrous fall. Before she can hit the ground, a firm hand snaps around her waist to steady her. Hee-yuan holds her in a tight grip, mockingly suggesting that her clumsiness is actually a bold attempt to get his attention. Fuming with silent rage, Jinfei curses the fact that her dream of being a jewelry designer has been replaced by this corporate nightmare. Hee-yuan casually strolls away, whistling a tune while ordering her to fetch him a fresh cup of coffee immediately. Shadows fall over her eyes as she realizes she's trapped in this role for the sake of her mother's medical bills. She returns moments later to place the hot drink on his desk, catching him off guard with her incredible speed. Without wasting a second, she pivots on her heel to make a swift exit from his oppressive presence. Hee-yuan halts her in her tracks, delivering a strict new dress code that forbids any makeup in his office. Angered by his controlling behavior, she snaps back that she's a professional employee, not a decorative object for his amusement. He simply offers as a smug grin, instructing her to arrive early every morning to prepare his beverages. Jinfei storms out of the room, slamming the heavy office doors to vent her mounting frustration. Alone at last, Hee-yuan takes a moment to appreciate the rich aroma rising from the cup. He leans back in his executive chair, admitting that her first task was executed with surprising perfection. A sharp knock echoes through the executive suite, signaling the arrival of a new report. Hee-yuan remains perfectly composed, taking a slow sip of his coffee as he grants permission to enter. The head assistant steps forward, placing a thick stack of investigative files directly onto the desk. He adjusts his glasses with clinical precision, prepared to deliver the latest findings on their new employee. Hee-yuan's eyes narrow slightly, sensing there is more to this update than a simple status report. The assistant notes that the entire office is already buzzing with whispers regarding Li Jinfei's sudden appointment. Unfazed by the corporate gossip, the CEO demands to know the specific nature of these rumors. It seems the staff is shocked that she is the first woman permitted to work in such close proximity to him. With a dismissive wave of his hand, Hee-yuan orders his subordinate to silence any further speculation immediately. The assistant bows his head in compliance, ready to conclude the meeting and return to his duties. However, he pauses to mention a glaring irregularity they discovered while vetting her family history. The digital records show a complete lack of information regarding the identity of Jinfei's father. Hee-yuan studies the profile with a dark, intrigued smirk, finding her mysterious background quite fascinating. Outside, the sun beats down on the Shangguang building as the workday continues in full swing. In the quiet of the break room, Jinfei focuses on her technical task of preparing the perfect brew. She maintains a stoic expression as she carries the tray past colleagues who are openly judging her presence. Letting out a weary sigh, she resolves to ignore the toxicity and focus purely on her professional responsibilities. She reaches for the heavy handle of the CEO's office, bracing herself for another round of demands. Upon entering, she finds the executive lounge in a state of complete disarray with documents scattered everywhere. Seeing the cluttered table, she decides to take the initiative and tidy the workspace before her boss returns. Hee-yuan leans over the sofa to assert his dominance, creating a high-pressure environment for his new secretary. A sudden, loud knock at the door breaks the heavy atmosphere and alerts them to an incoming visitor. Jinfei uses the interruption to forcefully push him back and re-establish her personal space. She quickly retreats to the corner as Hee-yuan adjusts his tie to regain his professional appearance. A senior staff member enters the room, casting a sharp, suspicious glance toward the disheveled Jinfei. The woman's face contorts with visible irritation, clearly resenting Jinfei's position within the inner circle. Hee-yuan turns his full attention to the new arrival, stoically asking for the scheduled afternoon update. The staffer forces a professional smile as she presents the details for a high-profile corporate banquet. Hee-yuan taps his fingers against the mahogany desk, weighing the strategic importance of the event. He confirms his attendance, closing his eyes briefly as he formulates a plan for the evening. The assistant's eyes go wide with shock when he orders her to procure a high-end evening gown for his secretary. Jinfei stands frozen by the door, realizing she's just been drafted to accompany him to the gala. A sleek luxury sedan pulls up to the entrance of a grand, brightly lit venue. Li Jinfei steps out of the vehicle, dressed in an elegant navy gown for the high-stakes evening. Hee-yuan extends his arm, signaling for her to take it as they prepare to enter together. He maintains a stoic and composed expression, playing the part of a perfect gentleman for the public. Internally, Jinfei mocks his polished exterior, knowing his polite behavior is merely a calculated performance. They walk to the opulent ballroom, the light from a massive crystal chandelier reflecting off their expensive attire. A sudden, heavy silence falls over the crowd as every guest turns to stare at the unexpected pair. The room erupts into frantic whispers as people realize the notorious CEO has brought a female companion. Feeling the weight of dozens of judgmental eyes, Jinfei struggles to maintain her professional composure. Hee-yuan keeps his focus on the room, quietly telling her to relax while he enjoys a glass of champagne. She looks up at him in surprise, wondering if he is genuinely attempting to offer her some comfort. Across the room, a stunning woman watches them with a knowing and confident smile. Song Rikyu, known as the most beautiful woman in the city, approaches them in a shimmering gold gown. Jinfei is momentarily stunned by the woman's striking presence and sophisticated aura. The two elites clink their glasses together in a polished display of high society etiquette. Feeling like an outsider in their world, Jinfei lowers her gaze and wonders about their connection. Song Rikyu shifts shifts her attention to Jinfei, her eyes filled with a sharp, calculating curiosity. She remarks on the rarity of seeing any woman by He Yuan's side, suggesting Jinfei must be very special. Panicking at the sudden spotlight, Jinfei desperately hopes He Yuan will step in to clarify her role. Realizing he has no intention of helping her, she resolves to handle the introduction herself. She politely introduces herself as his personal secretary while shaking Song Ruqiu's hand. He Yuan leans in close, boldly claiming that Jinfei is a woman who has managed to pique his unique interest. Jinfei fumes with internal rage, realizing he is intentionally making the situation more awkward for his own amusement. A shadow of disappointment crosses Song Ruqiu's face as she processes his surprising declaration. The orchestra begins to play a melodic tune, signaling the start of the evening's first formal dance. Song Ruqiu invites He Yuan to the floor, citing his past assistance in Paris as a reason for the honor. Watching the interaction, Jinfei realizes that the beautiful socialite clearly harbors deep feelings for the CEO. To everyone's shock, He Yuan politely declines the invitation in favor of the woman standing beside him. He firmly takes Jinfei's hand, stating that he cannot allow his chosen partner to feel any embarrassment tonight. The onlookers are left in total disbelief as the CEO rejects the city's top beauty, ignoring his reputation for having only fleeting associations. Jinfei narrows her eyes, seeing right through his chivalry and realizing she is being used as a social shield. He Yuan extends his hand toward her with a faint smile, formally requesting her presence on the dance floor. He leads her into the center of the room, promising to guide her through the technical steps of the dance. The ballroom is alive with the rhythmic swirl of elite couples moving to the elegant music. Li Jinfei follows the steps with practiced grace, though her mind is far from the dance floor. He Yuan maintains a firm, professional grip on her back to ensure they stay perfectly in sync, while he puts on a stoic front for the elite guests. Jinfei silently fumes at being used as his social prop. Deciding she won't be a passive shield for his games, she prepares a subtle retaliation of her own. With a sharp, calculated movement, she brings her heel down hard on his expensive leather shoe. She immediately masks her defiance with a fake smile, feigning a clumsy apology for the slip. He Yuan's expression darkens as he realizes she is intentionally testing his patience in public. Internally, Jinfei celebrates her small victory, savoring the moment she finally caught him off guard. Her triumph vanishes instantly when she sees a dangerous, focused glint return to his eyes. Without a word, he pulls her back into his personal space, tightening his hold on her waist to regain control. He leans down, whispering a stern warning about the consequences of trying to play smart with him. To the absolute shock of the surrounding crowd, he leans in to create a scene of overwhelming public intimacy. Jinfei freezes in place, her face flushing with a mix of shock and pure indignation at his bold maneuver. Nearby, an opportunistic photographer captures the scandalous moment, the flashbulbs recording the event for the morning news. The sharp sound of the camera's shutter alerts He Yuan, who breaks the staged embrace with lightning speed. He turns his cold gaze toward the intruder, demanding the immediate surrender of the camera. The photographer trembles under the CEO's intense pressure, realizing he's just made a career-ending mistake. A sudden vibration from He Yuan's pocket breaks the tension as a high-priority call comes through. He answers with a sharp command, while Jinfei takes the opportunity to quietly slip away from his side. He listens to the urgent report, his professional focus shifting entirely to a new corporate crisis. Jinfei watches him from a distance, wondering what kind of secret business requires such a serious tone. Before she can make her exit, He Yuan corners her against a pillar, blocking her path with a heavy arm. He stares into her eyes, demanding to know exactly how much of his private conversation she managed to overhear. A waiter happens to pass by at that exact moment, carrying a tray of refreshments for the VIPs. Desperate for a distraction to break the high-pressure interrogation, Jinfei reaches for a glass. She quickly drains the beverage in one go, hoping the liquid will calm her racing heart. The waiter's eyes go wide with panic as he reveals the drink was a special tonic prepared exclusively for Mr. He. He Yuan's brow furrows as he realizes Jinfei has just consumed a very potent and unintended substance. A sudden, intense heat begins to radiate through Jinfei's body, causing her to gasp for air. He Yuan watches her with growing suspicion, sensing that her professional composure is rapidly failing. Jinfei's vision begins to swim, and her face turns a deep crimson as the mysterious drink takes full effect on her system. He Yuan catches the swaying Jinfei as her face flushes from the tonic's intense physiological effects. He pulls her back upright, demanding to know if her sudden dizziness is just a distraction from his private phone call. He Yuan's gaze hardens into a cold stare as he insists she be completely honest about what she overheard. Jinfei struggles to maintain her focus, her vision blurring as she weakly insists she didn't hear anything at all. She fans herself frantically, desperately begging for some ice water to combat the overwhelming heat rising in her chest. He Yuan's eyes widen in sudden realization as he finally recognizes the symptoms of potent drink she consumed. He scans the ballroom with clinical precision, searching for the bartender responsible for the specialized brew. Realizing the man has already slipped away into the crowd, He Yuan turns his attention back to his struggling secretary. Jinfei leans in closer, her voice trembling as she calls out his name in a dazed state of total disorientation. A dark, amused smirk crosses the CEO's face as he finds her unexpected lack of professional composure quite entertaining. Without a word, he sweeps her off her feet in a firm bridal carry to shield her from the prying eyes of the elite. He maintains a powerful, steady grip on her to ensure she doesn't stumble as he makes a swift move for the exit. Outside, the luxury sedan pulls away from the venue at high speed, leaving the high society gala far behind. The remaining guests huddle together in a state of shock, whispering about the CEO's unprecedented and early departure. Hee Yuan carries her through the threshold of a private suite, focused on managing the fallout of the evening's events. The next morning, Jinfei wakes up in a daze to find Hee Yuan sitting stoically on the sofa in a fresh robe. He reaches out for a small, professional document resting on the table beside him. He holds out a blank corporate check, presenting it to her with a completely unreadable expression. He coldly instructs her to fill in whatever number she deems fair as a professional settlement for the night's complications. The silence of the morning hangs heavy over the hotel suite as the early sun begins to break through the curtains. Hee Yuan gestures toward the blank check, reminding her that she can demand any sum she desires as compensation for the night's chaos. He leans back with a calculated air of indifference, challenging her to decide exactly how much her professional dignity is worth. Jinfei stares at the document, her eyes flashing with sudden indignation at the suggestion that she can be so easily bought off. She leans forward with a defiant spark, warning him that their professional dynamic should not be reduced to a mere financial transaction. Clutching the blanket tightly against her chest, she looks down at the check again, torn between her pride and her mounting medical debts. Her frustration finally boils over as she sharply calls him out for his arrogant and manipulative behavior. Hee Yuan freezes in place, genuinely stunned to be spoken to with such blunt and unfiltered honesty. Instead of reacting with anger, a dark sense of intrigue fills him as he approaches the bed to face his defiant secretary. Jinfei huffs with irritation, labeling him a big bad wolf for his relentless and predatory corporate tactics. Hee Yuan offers a rare, subtle smile, deciding to grant her a temporary reprieve from his intense psychological pressure. He calmly announces his intention to head for the shower, leaving the final decision about the settlement entirely in her hands. He turns away with effortless confidence, heading toward the bathroom to prepare for the high-stakes workday ahead. Alone at last, Jinfei bites her lip, wondering if the CEO is intentionally holding a grudge to make her life a living nightmare. She slumps down into the pillows for a moment, feeling completely drained by the sheer weight of the week's events. Sitting up in the oversized bed, she winces at the physical exhaustion lingering from the previous night's ordeal. Her gaze locks onto the check sitting on the table, and a sudden, bold idea begins to take shape in her mind. She firmly grasps the pen, her resolve hardening as she decides to take full advantage of his generous offer. With a look of focused determination, she prepares to name a price that reflects the immense trouble he's caused her. She scribbles a massive figure onto the document, refusing to let her appetite for justice be restrained by politeness. Moving with sudden urgency, she scrambles out of the bed to gather her things and make a quick exit from the suite. She throws a final, playful wave toward the room, clutching her high-value prize as she makes her successful escape. Hee Yuan emerges from the bathroom to find the room empty, save for the pen left behind as a silent witness to her departure. A smug grin spreads across his face as he realizes his secretary actually had the nerve to take the money and vanish. He crosses his arms over his chest, thoroughly impressed by her refusal to play by the usual social rules. Reaching down to the floor, he retrieves his smartphone to address the more pressing matters of the gala sabotage. He places a high-priority call, his voice turning cold as he demands to know the identity of the person who hired the bartender. He issues a strict ultimatum to his team, giving them exactly 3 days to uncover the truth behind the attack. He settles back against the bed linens, his mind already spinning with new ways to manage his rebellious assistant. He stares into the distance with a focused intensity, reflecting on the unique impact she has made on his strictly controlled life. Running a hand through his hair, he resolves to ensure that his influence over her career remains absolute and forever. The People's Hospital stands tall under a clear sky, the site of Jinfei's greatest personal struggle. A smartphone screen displays an incoming call from Dr. Lei, signaling urgent news regarding her mother. Jinfei's heels click rapidly against the hospital floor as she rushes toward the medical wing. Still dressed in her gala gown, Jinfei explains to the staff that she has arrived specifically to settle her mother's mounting medical debts. Her heart sinks when Dr. Li informs her that her mother's condition has taken a turn for the worse, far beyond financial concerns. Without a second thought, she breaks into a frantic sprint down the sterile corridor. Tears sting her eyes as she silently pleads for her mother to hold on just a little longer. She rounds the corner and spots Dr. Li, her face a mask of panic as she demands an immediate update. Jinfei grabs the doctor's arms, her voice trembling as she asks what could have possibly happened so suddenly. The doctor's expression is grim as he explains that her mother lost her will to live after discovering the true cost of her treatment. He solemnly reveals that the older woman attempted to take her own life the previous night and was only saved by a vigilant nurse. Jinfei reaches for the cold metal handle of the hospital room door, her hand shaking with the weight of the revelation. She stands at the foot of the bed, watching her mother sleep under the heavy influence of hospital-grade sedatives. A single tear tracks down her cheek as she realizes her mother's battle is now one of the mind rather than just the body. She collapses by the bedside, clutching her mother's hand and whispering a desperate vow to protect her only remaining family. The heavy silence is shattered by the sharp vibration of her phone, glowing with an ill-timed notification. Jinfei answers the call, struggling to mask her emotional exhaustion with a professional tone. On the other end, He-yuan maintains his cold, demanding demeanor, ordering her back to the office within the hour. Jinfei tries to explain her personal crisis, but the CEO remains unmoved by her plea for a brief leave of absence. The call disconnects abruptly, leaving Jinfei with a harsh ultimatum and a ticking clock. Back at the corporate headquarters, He-yuan stands by the window, tasking his assistant with monitoring Jinfei's every movement. He stares at his own reflection, admitting to himself that he simply cannot tolerate her being out of his sight for long. Jinfei arrives at the lobby in her rumpled evening wear, drawing judgmental stares and whispers from the office staff. She knocks tentatively on the heavy door of the executive suite, bracing for her boss's next move. He-yuan sits behind his desk with calculated poise, immediately commanding her to prepare him a cup of coffee. Jinfei clenches her jaw, cursing his arrogance as she realizes he summoned her back for such a trivial task. She works the coffee machine in the break room, her mind still preoccupied with her mother's precarious state. A wave of worry washes over her as she wonders if her mother has woken up since she left the hospital. Her solitude is interrupted by the arrival of a blonde colleague who eyes her with blatant hostility. The woman aggressively shoves Jinfei aside, causing the hot liquid to slosh precariously in the cup. Scalding coffee spills over Jinfei's hands, staining her skin and the expensive fabric of her gown. The blonde woman smirks, mockingly suggesting that Jinfei is better suited for cleaning floors than working for the president. Jinfei stares down at her burned hand, her patience finally snapping after a night of relentless pressure. A sharp, echoing crack fills the room as Jinfei delivers a swift, righteous blow to her harasser's face. The colleague reels back in total shock, clutching her stinging cheek as she realizes she picked the wrong target. Jinfei stands her ground with fiery eyes, warning the woman that she will no longer tolerate being bullied in her workplace. Jinfei turns her back on the fuming bully, refusing to let anyone else's toxicity get under her skin. She stares ahead with a hardened gaze, focused only on completing her task and surviving the day. Her hand grips the office door handle, bracing for the inevitable confrontation with her cold-hearted boss. She carefully sets the cup down, maintaining a professional distance as she serves the demanding CEO. A bead of sweat rolls down her face as she tries to hide the emotional turmoil of her mother's crisis. He-yuan narrows his eyes, his sharp intuition immediately picking up on her uncharacteristic hesitation. He takes a sip while demanding an explanation for her strange behavior and messy appearance. Jinfei looks away, her shadow deepening as she struggles to find a believable excuse. She quickly pivots to business, reminding him of the senior management meeting scheduled on his calendar. He-yuan leans back with nonchalant ease, revealing he's cleared his entire schedule just for her. His professional attire remains perfectly pressed as he prepares to assert his authority over the room. He reaches out a steady hand, closing the distance between them with predatory precision. Jinfei flinches instinctively, her eyes shielded as she avoids his intense, searching gaze. His cold eyes lock onto her, signaling that he won't let her escape this interrogation so easily. He firmly tilts her chin up, demanding to know why she's suddenly acting so defensive around him. His grip on her wrist tightens, ensuring she stays put while he investigates her obvious distress. In the scuffle, the coffee cup tips over, drenching the corporate documents in dark liquid. Jinfei panics at the sight of the ruined paperwork, fearing the professional fallout of the accident. He-yuan looms over her, pointing out that his expensive suit is now completely ruined by the spill. He leans in further, his mind focused on managing the immediate mess on his clothing. A chaotic struggle ensues as Jinfei tries to push back against his overwhelming presence. The tension peaks as they grapple over the stained fabric, both refusing to back down. He-yuan moves with technical efficiency, attempting to assess the damage to his professional wardrobe. Jinfei's mind spins with frustration as she realizes she's trapped in yet another impossible situation. She finally manages to shove his hand away, desperate to regain her personal space. With a sharp strike, she deflects his reach, making it clear his physical proximity is unwanted. She stands tall and shouts her indignation, labeling him a bully for his relentless psychological games. Jinfei's voice cracks with raw emotion as she demands to know why he continues to treat her with such relentless cruelty. He-yuan turns his back on the chaos, staring out at the sprawling city skyline with a cold, detached gaze. His reflection in the glass reveals a man completely unfazed by her outburst, his mind already calculating his next move. He issues a sharp, uncompromising command to his assistant, threatening termination if the truth behind the gala sabotage isn't uncovered immediately. A dangerous glint appears in his eyes as he vows that anyone who dares to interfere with his staff will pay a heavy price. Later that day, Jinfei steps out of the corporate headquarters, her mind heavy with the day's professional setbacks. She looks down with a furrowed brow, her thoughts consumed by her mother's precarious condition back at the hospital. Suddenly, a firm hand clamps around her wrist, halting her progress with undeniable authority. She spins around in surprise, quickly reminding the CEO that her official working hours have already concluded for the day. Hee-yuan ignores her protest, instead extending a formal invitation for a business meeting over drinks. Jin-Fei's expression softens as she considers the potential bonus from the upcoming jewelry show, which could finally clear her mother's mounting debts. She realizes this professional opportunity is also her best chance to prove her worth as a top-tier designer. Steeling her resolve, she agrees to accompany him, walking toward the waiting vehicle with a renewed sense of purpose. Hee-yuan offers a rare, subtle smirk, challenging her to keep up with his demanding pace if she wants to succeed. The sleek luxury sedan glints under the golden light of the setting sun, ready to whisk them away to their next destination. Once inside the cabin, Jin-Fei maintains a cautious distance, eyeing her boss with a mixture of suspicion and lingering frustration. She feels a surge of annoyance as he leans in close, assuming he is attempting to invade her personal space yet again. Hee-yuan calmly addresses her concern, noting that she has completely misinterpreted his intentions in the confined space. He reaches across her with clinical precision, his only goal being to secure her seatbelt for the drive. He maintains a strictly professional focus, mocking her for jumping to such defensive and illogical conclusions. Jin-Fei fumes in silence, realizing she's fallen right into another one of his calculated psychological traps. They arrive at an upscale, European-style lounge, a quiet venue designed for high-level corporate discussions. The sommelier approaches their table, seeking the CEO's expert opinion on their extensive vintage collection. Hee-yuan reviews the menu with a practiced eye, surprisingly requesting a selection of lighter, fruity cocktails instead of a heavy wine. In a private aside to the staff, he specifies that the beverages should be potent enough to test his companion's professional composure. Jin-Fei listens intently to the order, her curiosity piqued by his uncharacteristic choice of refreshment. She offers a polite smile, relieved that the evening might be more casual and less high-pressure than she initially feared. Less than 15 minutes later, the potency of the drinks takes hold, causing Jin-Fei to boast loudly about her supposed high tolerance. Her vision begins to swirl with colorful patterns as the specialized cocktails rapidly overwhelm her senses. Hee-yuan watches her from across the table, finding her sudden lack of professional restraint quite revealing. He adjusts his posture, carefully observing how the beverage has completely dismantled her usual defensive barriers. He leans forward and gently tilts her chin up, asking a personal question about her relationship status to gauge her honesty while in this vulnerable state. Jin-Fei tilts her head in a daze, her mind struggling to process the CEO's sudden inquiry about her personal life. She sways on the spot, her face flushing a deep crimson as the potent cocktails finally take full control of her senses. Hee-yuan watches her with a subtle, knowing grin, satisfied that his plan to lower her guard has worked perfectly. Exhausted by the mental and physical strain of the day, Jin-Fei slumps back onto the plush velvet sofa of the VIP lounge. Hee-yuan leans in with clinical curiosity, observing the physical effects of the specialized drinks on his unsuspecting assistant. He maintains a steady, professional gaze while questioning if she has ever considered the complexities of a workplace relationship. In her disoriented state, Jin-Fei leans forward for support, resting her head against the CEO's chest as the room begins to spin. Hee-yuan looks down at her with a stern expression, warning her that losing control in a professional setting is like playing with fire. He firmly grips her shoulders to keep her upright, ensuring she doesn't lose her balance and cause a scene in the upscale establishment. The atmosphere in the lounge shifts as Hee-yuan stands close to her, his presence completely dominating the quiet space. He pauses for a moment, surprised by a sudden, uncharacteristic surge of adrenaline as he manages the delicate situation. He soon realizes that Jin-Fei has completely drifted off, her head lolling against his shoulder in a deep, alcohol-induced sleep. A rare, soft expression crosses his face as he decides to grant her a temporary reprieve from his usual cold demands. With effortless strength, he lifts her into his arms, determined to personally oversee her safe return from the lounge. A member of the waitstaff watches in stunned silence, completely caught off guard by the CEO's uncharacteristic display of care. Hee-yuan strides confidently through the venue, ignoring the whispers and judgmental stares of the surrounding patrons. He heads toward the exit with a sense of urgent purpose, signaling his driver to prepare the luxury vehicle immediately. The car arrives at a sprawling, high-security estate, the moonlight illuminating the grand architecture of the CEO's private residence. Hee-yuan carries his sleeping assistant through the front doors, his expression remaining stoic despite the unusual circumstances. The household staff members are left speechless, their faces contorted in shock at the sight of their master bringing a guest home. He issues a sharp, icy command for them to mind their own business and focus on their respective duties. Jin-Fei stirs slightly in her sleep, her face still flushed as she mumbles incoherently about her current state of discomfort. Yuan looks down at her with a faint, almost imperceptible smile, intrigued by her stubbornness even while unconscious. He narrows his eyes as he catches the faint scent of the lounge's signature cocktails still lingering in the air. He focuses on the technical challenge of ensuring she is settled comfortably without further disturbing her much-needed rest. The sun rises over the sprawling He family estate, a monument of architectural power nestled in the quiet suburbs. Soft morning light filters through the sheer curtains of the master bedroom, signaling the start of a brand new day. Jinfei's eyes flutter open, her mind still foggy from the previous night's unexpected festivities at the lounge. Her heart skips a beat as she turns her head, coming face to face with the CEO in a setting far removed from the office. He Yuan stands by the bed, calmly donning a crisp white shirt, while instructing her to prepare for a formal breakfast. He gazes out toward the vast grounds, reminding her that escape from this secluded suburban villa is practically impossible. Jinfei's face turns bright red as she shouts an indignant protest at his sheer audacity and lack of professional boundaries. He Yuan moves toward the door with a smirk, secretly finding her sober outburst far less charming than her drunken state. Moments later, Jinfei steps out into the hallway, her professional attire restored as she follows the lead of the household staff. A polite maid bows deeply, formally announcing to the master of the house that their guest has finally arrived for the morning meal. He Yuan waits in the grand sitting room, exuding an air of absolute authority as he relaxes on the ornate furniture. His sharp eyes narrow, meticulously scanning his assistant to ensure her appearance meets his exacting standards for the day ahead. Jinfei stands at the entrance, looking every bit the high-end professional in a perfectly tailored blouse and sleek pencil skirt. She immediately checks the time, worried that their detour to the estate will result in a major delay at the office. A flicker of anxiety crosses her features as she realizes just how much of the morning has already slipped away. She voices her concerns, pointing out that a leisurely breakfast is a luxury they simply cannot afford right now. He Yuan shifts his weight, the movement of his expensive suit reflecting his unwavering confidence in his own schedule. He looms over her with a commanding presence, assuring her that his personal influence will mitigate any professional fallout from their tardiness. An hour later, the estate staff gathers at the gates to bid a respectful farewell to the departing executive. He Yuan looks toward the horizon, his focus already shifting toward the complex corporate battles awaiting him at headquarters. A quick glance at his luxury timepiece confirms that they are indeed running significantly behind their usual morning routine. He maintains a cold, calculated stare, unbothered by the triviality of a slightly delayed start the workday. Outside the vehicle, Jinfei leans against the sleek frame, her patience wearing thin as she waits for the CEO to join her. She fumes silently, her legs aching from the wait, while she curses his complete lack of gentlemanly punctuality. He Yuan finally approaches the car, noting her dark aura and realizing he has pushed her tolerance to its absolute limit. The towering glass facade of the Shangguang building gleams under a clear blue sky, marking the start of another high-stakes workday. He Yuan's sleek luxury sedan pulls up to the entrance with practiced precision, signaling the arrival of the corporate titan. A security detail moves into position with military-like efficiency, their heavy footsteps echoing across the polished pavement. The lead guard barks out orders to his team, demanding they keep their eyes sharp and maintain a tight perimeter around the CEO. He Yuan maintains a cool professional distance, instructing Jinfei to head to her station before reporting to his office later. He blinks in genuine surprise as he realizes Jinfei has already vanished, leaving only a faint outline where she stood a second ago. Determined to avoid any further drama, Jinfei marches down the corridor with such speed that she's practically a blur. Her arrival doesn't go unnoticed, as office staffers huddle in the lobby to whisper scandalous theories about her riding in the president's car. Jinfei stops in her tracks, a dark cloud of frustration forming over her as she overhears the relentless office gossip. She grits her teeth and clenches her jaw, her patience reaching its absolute breaking point with her colleagues' baseless assumptions. With a fiery glare, she resolves to confront the source of these rumors and put an end to the workplace toxicity once and for all. She arrives at the heavy double doors of the president's office, the gold plaque serving as a final warning before she enters. Without a moment's hesitation, she delivers a sharp, authoritative knock that demands immediate attention from the man inside. He Yuan looks up from his mountain of paperwork with a detached expression, casually inquiring about the reason for her sudden intrusion. Jinfei slams her hands onto the mahogany desk, forcing him to acknowledge her presence and her growing indignation. She stands her ground and demands that he formally order the staff to stop spreading lies about their professional dynamic. He Yuan remains unfazed, peering over his documents as he questions her interpretation of the office chatter. Jinfei explodes in a fit of chibi-style rage, shouting that there is absolutely nothing unprofessional happening between them. A silent, electric tension crackles between them as they lock eyes, neither willing to yield in this battle of wills. He Yuan finally looks away and sighs, promising to handle the situation with his usual executive authority. As Jinfei walks through the lobby later, she notices a sudden, eerie silence as the staff members strictly focus on their tasks. She pauses with wide eyes, amazed that the CEO's influence was enough to instantly silence every single rumor mill in the building. Eager to find him, she sprints through the corporate halls, her hair trailing behind her like a pink banner. She stops to catch her breath, her lungs burning as she tries to regain her professional composure after the frantic dash. She spots He Yuan ahead and calls out to him, desperate to confirm that he actually took her request seriously. He Yuan turns around with a look of calm indifference, asking why she's making such a frantic scene in the middle of the hallway. She leans against the wall for support, breathlessly asking if he really did tell the entire company to shut up about her. He confirms his intervention with a slight smirk, immediately demanding to know how she plans to compensate him for the favor. Jinfei hesitates for a split second, her mind racing to find a way to express her gratitude without crossing any boundaries. She flashes a rare, genuine smile and offers to treat him to a strictly professional dinner to celebrate their successful cooperation. The evening sun sets over the city as Jinfei leads the powerful CEO to a humble local spot called Small Town Hot Pot, her voice trembling as she apologizes for the modest venue. He Yuan offers a rare, genuine smile, telling her there's no need for apologies as he takes in the unpretentious atmosphere. He settles into the booth with surprising ease, interlacing his fingers and admitting that he actually finds the charm of the restaurant quite appealing. He leans forward with a calculated gaze, remarking that the meal tastes significantly better simply because of her presence across the table. Jinfei huffs in frustration, her face flushing as she mentally prepares herself for a long night of his overwhelming charisma. She quickly grabs the vibrant red menu, desperate to shift the focus back to the technical details of their dinner. Peering over the edge of the paper, she asks if he has any preference for spicy cuisine, hoping to find a safe middle ground for their order. He Yuan takes a measured sip of his tea, calmly stating that he doesn't typically gravitate toward high-heat dishes. When the waitress arrives, Jinfei takes charge of the professional engagement, requesting a pot with only a mild level of spice to accommodate her guests. She looks at him with a mix of pity and duty, explaining that while the restaurant is famous for its heat, she's willing to compromise for his sensitive palate. Internally, she fumes at the missed opportunity to enjoy the establishment's signature kick, feeling trapped by her own politeness. Suddenly, she notices him reaching for the condiments, and she points a finger in a sharp gesture of confusion. Her eyes go wide as she shouts an accusation, demanding to know why he's contradicting his earlier statement about avoiding spicy food. He Yuan chuckles softly behind his chopsticks, clarifying that he merely said he doesn't eat it frequently, not that he's incapable of handling it. He maintains a look of smug satisfaction, clearly enjoying the way he can still manage to keep her off balance with a single sentence. A mischievous glint appears in his eyes as he admits he's actually perfectly fine with a little heat, leaving her feeling utterly played. Jinfei stares at him in disbelief, her mind racing to process his latest psychological maneuver in this high-stakes social game. Her thoughts are abruptly interrupted by the shrill ring of her phone, showing an incoming call from her mother's physician, Dr. Lei. Her professional mask slips as she excuses herself from the table, rushing toward a quiet corner to take the urgent call. Her voice trembles with fear as she answers, immediately asking if there has been a sudden decline in her mother's precarious condition. The doctor delivers a life-changing update, explaining that after intensive counseling, her mother is finally stable enough to undergo a critical operation. Jinfei stands frozen, her breath catching in her throat as the weight of the news begins to sink in. Tears of pure relief well up in her eyes as she thanks the doctor, feeling a massive burden lift from her shoulders for the first time in months. However, her joy is short-lived as the doctor reveals the technical catch. The procedure requires a staggering upfront payment of $500,000 yuan. She steps out onto the sidewalk, looking small and isolated under the harsh streetlights as she realizes the impossible financial mountain she now has to climb. Steeling her resolve, she turns back toward the restaurant, her heels clicking against the pavement with a newfound sense of desperate urgency. She approaches He Yuan's table and looks him directly in the eye, casting aside her pride to ask if he would be willing to lend her the $500,000 yuan. Jinfei's heart sinks as the doctor confirms the surgery requires a staggering $500,000 yuan up front. She paces the lonely sidewalk, crushed by the weight of a debt she cannot possibly afford. Swallowing her pride, she returns to the table and asks He Yuan for the massive loan. He Yuan wipes his mouth with clinical calm, agreeing only if she becomes his personal partner. He stares her down with icy resolve, making it clear this deal is non-negotiable. An invisible spark of pure defiance crackles between them as their eyes lock in a silent battle. He Yuan leans back, waiting with a smug grin for her to succumb to his overwhelming pressure. Jinfei lowers her head, the shadow of despair crossing her face as she weighs her limited options. She snaps back with fiery indignation, flatly rejecting his manipulative and unprofessional proposal. Without looking back, she storms out of the restaurant, leaving the CEO alone with his thoughts. Hee Yuan immediately pulls out a file, ordering a full report on Jinfei's recent movements and urgent needs. The sun shines over the city hospital, the center of Jinfei's escalating personal crisis. She delivers a hesitant, nervous knock on the doctor's office door later that morning. Dr. Lai looks up from his notes, reporting that her mother is currently stable and resting well. Jinfei leans forward desperately, begging for a one-week extension to gather the necessary funds. The doctor adjusts his glasses, clearly torn by the hospital's strict financial protocols and deadlines. Jinfei intensifies her gaze, using every ounce of her will to sway his professional decision. Under the pressure of her unwavering stare, the doctor finally relents and grants her the extra time. Night falls over the city, the glowing windows of apartment blocks highlighting her growing isolation. Jinfei wanders the dark streets, frantically calling every contact in her phone for a financial lifeline. Each call ends in a quick rejection as her friends admit they are also struggling. She stares at her phone screen in total despair, realizing she is truly alone in this fight. Lost in thought, she fails to notice two strangers suddenly blocking her path on the sidewalk. She bumps into a hard chest, looking up in shock as she realizes she's walked into trouble. A group of local punks quickly surrounds her, offering unwanted company in the middle of the night. She forces a polite smile, desperately lying that her boyfriend is already on his way to meet her. The lead punk ignores her plea, focusing his attention on her elegant professional attire. He steps into her personal space, violating all social boundaries with his aggressive, towering stance. The group shows an alarming lack of restraint, their faces twisted in a display of unruly behavior. Suddenly, a familiar and commanding figure appears in the shadows directly behind the group. Hee Yuan strides forward with his personal bodyguard, his expression radiating pure executive coldness. Jinfei's eyes light up with sudden, overwhelming relief as she recognizes her boss's timely arrival. Hee Yuan stops and adjusts his collar, looking unimpressed by the low-level street confrontation. He casts a terrifying glare that sends an immediate wave of panic through the loitering punks. He reaches out and firmly takes her hand, asserting his absolute presence over the situation. He leads her away with professional authority, leaving his staff to handle the troublemakers. Jinfei looks up at him in awe, stunned that the cold CEO actually came to her rescue. As night falls over the city, the skyscrapers glow like beacons against the dark horizon. The bustling highways below become rivers of light, highlighting the relentless pace of the urban jungle. Inside the sleek interior of his car, Hee Yuan maintains a stony silence while focusing on the road ahead. His cold profile remains unreadable, leaving the atmosphere thick with an unspoken, heavy tension. Jinfei grips her skirt tightly, her knuckles turning white as she struggles with the weight of her next words. She finally breaks the silence with a desperate shout, announcing that she is ready to accept his earlier proposal. Internally, she fumes with a mischievous edge, wondering why the CEO hasn't immediately jumped at her sudden change of heart. A subtle, mocking smile plays across Hee Yuan's lips as he prepares to deliver a crushing blow to her ego. He flatly refuses her offer, leaving Jinfei completely stunned by his unexpected change of mind. She stammers in confusion, unable to comprehend why he would turn down the very deal he fought so hard for. Hee Yuan looks down with a detached expression, coldly explaining that things gained too easily are never truly valued. Jinfei stares at him with a mix of frustration and hidden longing, her heart racing as she tries to decipher his complex motives. Without a hint of emotion, he informs her that they have reached her destination and commands her to leave. She is left fuming on the curb, shouting insults at the departing luxury car as it disappears into the night. Over the following days, she exhausts every possible lead, begging for assistance from anyone who might listen. She feels like she's reaching for a lifeline that is perpetually out of her grasp. Her spirit begins to sink into a metaphorical abyss, overwhelmed by the crushing weight of her financial burden. In the depths of her despair, she fixates on the only person who still holds the power to save her. Hee Yuan's image looms large in her mind's eye, his professional dominance representing her final hope. Determined to save her mother, she stands before him once more, ready to seize this last, desperate opportunity. Hee Yuan sits behind his massive desk, with his hands folded, casually asking for the purpose of her visit. Jinfei trembles with a mix of fear and indignation, her resolve wavering under his piercing executive gaze. She struggles to find her voice, the words catching in her throat as she prepares to surrender her pride. With a final, desperate cry, she pleads for him to allow her to fulfill the role he previously demanded. Hee Yuan leans in close and tilts her chin up, forcing her to look directly into his sharp, calculating eyes. The power dynamic is clear, resembling a predatory wolf staring down a defenseless, trembling rabbit. He narrows his gaze, his overwhelming presence making it clear that she is now entirely within his grasp. Jinfei waits in breathless silence, her fate hanging on his next professional decision. A triumphant smirk crosses his face as he finds her total submission to be a very interesting development. A flicker of relief washes over her features, believing that the hardest part of the negotiation is finally over. However, Hee Yuan immediately adds a final condition, stating that their new professional arrangement requires her to move into his residence immediately. Hee Yuan smiles with a chilling sense of victory, finding her sudden compliance to be a truly fascinating turn of events. He maintains his cool composure as he lays out the final terms, insisting that their new arrangement requires her to move into his private quarters immediately. Jinfei stands amidst the lush greenery of the estate, mentally bracing herself for the challenge of residing with the man she considers her greatest adversary. The sprawling villa stands as a symbol of his immense wealth and the high-security environment she must now call home. She sits stiffly on the edge of the pristine bed, her hands clutching her skirt as she waits for his next administrative instruction. The silence of the massive bedroom weighs heavily on her, emphasizing the stark reality of her desperate financial situation. She looks small and isolated in the vast space, her professional resolve being tested by the sheer scale of the CEO's lifestyle. She snaps her head up as the sound of the shower stops, her eyes wide with apprehension about the upcoming discussion. A subtle, knowing smirk plays across He Yuan's face, signaling that he is fully aware of the psychological leverage he holds over her. He steps into the room with a cold, detached air, maintaining a strictly professional focus on the terms of their cohabitation. He fixes her with a piercing gaze, reminding her that this partnership requires her absolute loyalty and cooperation. The two stand at a distance, the atmospheric tension reflecting the gravity of the life-altering contract they have just initiated. Jinfei looks up at him, her expression a mix of trepidation and the steely determination of someone who has no other choice. She lowers her gaze in a gesture of reluctant acceptance, acknowledging that she must follow his rules to save her family. The distance between them shrinks as the reality of their new domestic partnership begins to set in. With a deep breath, she steels her nerves, focusing entirely on the technical goal of securing her mother's life-saving surgery. He reaches out toward her with a deliberate, calculated motion to ensure she is paying full attention to his words. He firmly grasps her hand, a physical manifestation of the binding agreement that now links their futures together. He leans in to emphasize the weight of his authority, questioning her apparent hesitation to fulfill the duties of her new role. He looks down with a cold, analytical perspective, gauging her emotional resilience under this intense corporate-style pressure. Jinfei maintains a stoic profile, refusing to let him see the depth of her internal conflict during this high-stakes negotiation. He Yuan's expression remains unreadable, his eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of a man who has successfully closed a difficult deal. He suddenly turns away, dismissively stating that she is free to walk out if she finds the terms of the agreement too demanding. Jinfei's eyes are shrouded in a dark shadow of resolve as she reminds herself that he is the only person capable of funding her mother's operation. He Yuan glances back with a look of mild amusement, noting that the late hour makes the necessity of their arrangement even more apparent. Tears of frustration and relief well up in her eyes as she prepares to finalize the most difficult transaction of her life. He Yuan reaches out and offers a formal bank draft, signaling the completion of the first phase of their professional agreement. Her eyes widen in pure shock as she realizes the document in her hand is worth far more than she originally requested. She looks at his back in confusion, questioning why he has doubled the amount needed for the medical procedure. He Yuan turns back with a look of executive pride, explaining that he always ensures his partners are provided for with maximum efficiency. A sudden, jarring cry "no" echoes through the night, signaling a dramatic shift in the atmosphere that neither of them anticipated. The sterile, quiet hallways of the hospital reflect the calm before the storm of her mother's life-saving procedure. Dr. Lee meets her with a nod of professional approval, confirming that the timely payment has secured her mother's treatment. Jinfei leans forward with a look of immense relief, her voice thick with emotion as she expresses her profound gratitude for his administrative assistance. The doctor waves off her thanks with a humble gesture, informing her that the critical operation is officially scheduled for the very next morning. A radiant smile finally breaks across her face as the weight of the world lifts, knowing her mother finally has a real chance at recovery. High above the city in the Shengguang building, He Yuan stands before his floor-to-ceiling windows, his mind clearly focused on his missing employee. He narrows his eyes in a sharp, calculating gaze, questioning the true reason behind Jinfei's sudden absence from her professional duties. His assistant delivers a concise report, confirming that the designer has spent her entire day within the confines of the local hospital. He Yuan adjusts his tie with a cold, executive precision, his curiosity piqued by her uncoordinated movements. He stands in a moment of silent calculation, weighing the technical implications of her personal crisis on their ongoing arrangement. Jinfei arrives at her mother's ward later that day, her eyes widening in total shock at the sight of an unexpected visitor. She cautiously peeks into the sterile room, her heart racing as she tries to comprehend the scene unfolding before her. The atmosphere in the room is thick with a heavy silence as she finds the imposing CEO standing right beside her mother's bed. Her mother looks up from her pillows with a start, her expression shifting from confusion to sudden, wide-eyed realization. A warm, approving smile spreads across the older woman's face as she immediately assumes the powerful man is Jinfei's new romantic partner. The mother lets out a soft, delighted chuckle, leaving Jinfei feeling utterly mortified by the rapidly escalating social misunderstanding. Panicked, Jinfei tries to interject and shut down the false narrative before it can spiral any further out of control. Her gaze darts frantically between her mother and the CEO, her mind racing to salvage what remains of her professional dignity. Before she can speak, she feels a firm, controlling grip on her arm that grounds her in the middle of the high-stakes encounter. Hee-yuan puts on a masterclass in executive charm, offering a polite greeting and smoothly introducing himself as Jinfei's committed boyfriend. Jinfei is left reeling in total disbelief, unable to recognize the cold, poker-faced businessman in this new, deceptively friendly role. The sprawling Sheng mansion glows under the night sky, its modern architecture a testament to the CEO's untouchable status. Inside, Hee-yuan's professional patience evaporates as he suddenly seizes Jinfei's wrist with an iron grip. He wastes no time dragging her through the opulent hallway, ignoring her immediate protests. Jinfei snaps back with a sharp demand for her release, her face flushed with indignation at his forceful behavior. They storm past the household staff, who can only watch in silence as the intense dynamic between the two unfolds. Uncle Lee, the veteran butler, maintains a stoic expression despite the chaotic scene playing out before him. Reaching her limit, Jinfei sinks her teeth into Hee-yuan's arm in a desperate attempt to break his hold. She maintains her grip with ferocity, determined to prove that she won't be easily intimidated. A frantic struggle ensues as Hee-yuan tries to shake the stubborn designer off his arm like a persistent pest. Finally losing steam, Jinfei releases her hold and catches her breath, her eyes still burning with defiance. She insists that she must contact her mother immediately to prevent any unnecessary worry about her whereabouts. Hee-yuan leans in and roughly pinches her cheek, commanding her to make the call and confirm her safety. Uncle Lee steps forward with professional grace, inquiring if the kitchen staff should begin preparing the evening meal. Hee-yuan dismisses the offer with a cold gesture, announcing that Jinfei will be handling the culinary duties tonight. Stunned by the sudden assignment, Jinfei waves a frantic goodbye to the butler as she's thrust into her new domestic role. She stands frozen in the kitchen, her mind racing as she tries to process the CEO's increasingly erratic demands. The butler offers a supportive look, confident that the new madam of the house is up to the technical challenge. Jinfei's face falls in a shadow of pure disbelief, realizing the massive expectations now resting on her shoulders. The morning sun soon illuminates the vast estate, signaling the start of a grueling new routine. A wide array of traditional dishes is meticulously laid out across the dining table, the result of hours of labor. Jinfei presents her work with a smug humph, proud of the professional-grade spread she's managed to create. She hides a triumphant smile behind her hand, certain that her household skills will finally earn his respect. Hee-yuan picks up his chopsticks with clinical precision and takes a slow, calculated bite of the food. He chews the morsel with a stony expression, giving no immediate indication of his technical assessment. Jinfei leans in with sparkling eyes, eagerly awaiting the praise she believes she rightfully deserves. Without a word, Hee-yuan sets his chopsticks back down on the table with a sharp, final click. He fixes her with a piercing, accusatory glare, asking if her ultimate goal was to poison him with such a meal. The word terrible hits Jinfei like a physical blow, her confidence shattering instantly under his harsh critique. A dark, mocking smirk creeps across Hee-yuan's face as he enjoys the total success of his psychological games. Jinfei blinks in confusion, her suspicions rising as she realizes she's been played by the master manipulator. She erupts in a flurry of frustrated punches against his chest, calling him out for his blatant and unnecessary lies. Hee-yuan effortlessly catches her hands mid-air, asserting his physical dominance over the situation once again. He pulls her into a firm, commanding hold, sternly reminding her that she must officially move in by tomorrow. Jinfei stares up at him in stunned silence, completely caught off guard by the sudden shift in his professional intensity. Hee-yuan delivers his next executive order, granting her a day off from the office specifically to pack her belongings for the move. Jinfei's eyes widen in sudden alarm as she catches a detail in his plan that sounds far too personal for a standard business arrangement. She stares up at him in disbelief, questioning why her luggage would be directed to his private suite rather than a guest wing. She quickly points out the obvious logistical fact that his massive villa has more than enough rooms to keep their living quarters separate. Hee-yuan ignores her protests, closing the distance and taking a firm, authoritative hold on her chin to ensure she understands the gravity of her new role. He coldly asserts his total ownership of the situation, declaring that as his partner, her primary duty is to be present and available within his quarters at all times. The following day, the corporate atmosphere of the Shengguang headquarters remains as cold and demanding as ever. Hee-yuan rests a steady hand on the latest administrative documents, his focus momentarily shifting from business to his new house guest. He leans back in his executive chair with his hands folded, demanding a full status report on how Jinfei is handling her first day of relocation. His assistant provides a detailed timeline, noting that she spent the morning at the hospital before returning home to finalize her move. Hee-yuan listens with a sharp, calculating silence, absorbing every detail of her movements throughout the day. He suddenly snaps at the assistant, accusing him of providing too much unnecessary chatter during the professional briefing. The assistant bows deeply in a display of corporate submission, quickly apologizing for his lack of brevity. Without another word, the CEO waves his hand in a dismissive gesture, signaling that the meeting is officially over. He stands and adjusts his suit, his mind already racing toward the evening confrontation awaiting him at the villa. The assistant can only think to himself how ironic it is that the boss demanded every detail only to complain when he actually received them. As the sun sets, the sprawling estate is bathed in a golden light, masking the tension rising within its walls. Hee-yuan sits alone in the main hall with his arms crossed, his dark expression signaling that a metaphorical storm is about to break. Uncle Lee frets in the background, worried that the new madam's late arrival will only further agitate the temperamental CEO. The exterior of the mansion remains silent as the night deepens, the atmosphere growing heavier with every passing minute of her absence. The butler suddenly perks up as the front door finally opens, preparing himself to act as a buffer between the two clashing personalities. He quickly makes himself scarce, hurrying toward the kitchen to check on the dinner preparations before the atmosphere turns sour. Jinfei attempts to sneak into the house on tiptoe, hoping to avoid a direct confrontation with her new landlord. She freezes in place, her heart dropping as she realizes she's been caught red-handed by the man waiting in the shadows. Hee-yuan stares at her with a chilling, unspoken judgment, his silence more terrifying than any verbal reprimand. She offers a weak, nervous excuse about a sudden traffic jam, her voice trembling under his intense executive gaze. He reaches out toward her with a slow, deliberate movement, intending to bring her back into his sphere of influence. Jinfei ducks away with practiced agility, shouting that she's exhausted and heading straight for the safety of her room. Hee-yuan watches her retreating figure with a look of mild intrigue, realizing that his new partner is now actively trying to hide from him. The sun shines brightly over the Shengguang building, where the next phase of their complex business arrangement is about to unfold. Jinfei stands outside the executive office, clutching her latest designs as she mentally prepares for another intense professional encounter. She takes a long, steadying breath, trying to calm her racing heart before facing her demanding benefactor. Reclaiming her professional composure, she resolves to maintain a brave face despite the personal pressure of their current living situation. With a sharp rap on the heavy door, she announces her presence, ready to deliver the department's technical progress report. A cold, authoritative voice from within grants her permission to enter the inner sanctum of the corporate empire. She cautiously places the design documents on the desk, focusing entirely on the technical merits of her work to avoid any personal distractions. Before she can retreat, Hee-yuan's hand shoots out with lightning speed, firmly securing her wrist in a display of absolute control. He pulls her toward him with an irresistible force, closing the distance to remind her of the physical proximity their contract now demands. He leans in with a piercing gaze, demanding to know if she has been intentionally avoiding her professional obligations at the villa. Jinfei is momentarily stunned by the intensity of his presence, her senses overwhelmed by the close proximity of the powerful CEO. Hee-yuan fixes her with a stern, unwavering look, ensuring she understands that evasion is not a viable option under his watch. She casts her eyes downward, softly pleading for him to release his grip so they can maintain a proper office decorum. Instead of letting go, he pulls her even closer, asserting his authority over her schedule and her undivided attention. He leans in to deliver a low-voiced reprimand, emphasizing that her actions have serious consequences within their high-stakes partnership. With a look of cold determination, he makes it clear that he expects full cooperation in exchange for his continued financial backing. He looms over her with a triumphant expression, satisfied that he has successfully cornered his most rebellious asset. He declares with a chilling sense of finality that she is now bound to him by both contract and circumstance. Jinfei pushes back against his chest, her hand a firm barrier as she tries to reclaim her personal space in the middle of the office. Hee-yuan merely loosens his tie with a smirk, coolly asking if she is prepared to face the legal penalties of defaulting on their agreement. She clenches her fist in silent frustration, her knuckles turning white as she grapples with the reality of her limited options. He notes with a look of mild amusement that she has been playing a game of hide-and-seek since the move began. Jinfei looks away with a troubled expression, weakly denying the accusation while struggling to keep her professional dignity intact. He catches her chin to force eye contact, listening as she promises to settle her financial debts as quickly as possible. A flicker of hope crosses her face when he suggests that immediate monetary repayment might not be his primary focus. However, he pulls her back into his sphere of influence, stating that he intends to collect on the technical interest of their deal right now. Hee-yuan stands in the hallway, sensing a presence but finding only the empty air where Jinfei was just a second ago. She continues her game of corporate hide-and-seek, ducking behind her paperwork whenever he happens to glance in her direction. The arrival of the weekend brings a wave of pure joy as she celebrates her temporary liberation from the CEO's watchful eye. She locks in a pact with her best friend, promising a night of entertainment that will last until the early hours of the morning. Her friend can't help but chuckle at the display, noting that Jinfei is acting more like a restless child than a professional designer. The two head out into the bright afternoon, eager to leave the stress of the office far behind them. Jinfei leans in with a burst of frantic energy, explaining just how much pressure she's been under during this grueling work week. Her friend suddenly stops in her tracks, her attention caught by a group of well-dressed men gathered further down the path. The center of the social whirlwind is none other than He Yuan himself, looking perfectly composed despite the crowd of admirers surrounding him. Beside him, his companion Lin Yiren sighs in defeat, knowing he'll never be the center of attention while the CEO is in the vicinity. Jinfei and her friend freeze in place, their plan for a quiet getaway instantly ruined by this unexpected encounter. Lin Yiren's eyes suddenly light up as he spots a new face in the crowd, sensing an opportunity to finally make a move of his own. He slides over with a practiced, charming grin, politely asking the stunned designer for her name. The atmosphere turns icy as He Yuan steps forward, demanding to know exactly what his employee is doing at this particular venue. Jinfei's hand trembles as she clenches her fist, the weight of his administrative authority crashing down on her once again. She forces a tight, nervous smile, her face beaded with a cold sweat as she tries to think of a logical explanation for her presence. Her friend can only offer a look of silent sympathy before beating a hasty retreat from the impending executive fallout. The group eventually relocates to an exclusive private club, where the high-stakes social dynamics continue under a much more controlled environment. He Yuan maintains a strictly professional distance on the lounge sofa, even as the local socialites attempt to engage him in conversation. Jinfei sits across from him in a heavy silence, her mind racing to find a way out of this awkward social obligation. The tension in the room remains palpable as the two colleagues find themselves at the center of everyone's curious gaze. Lin Yiren breaks the silence by reintroducing himself, determined to keep the technical focus on their social gathering. He leans in toward Jinfei, suggesting that the entire group should find a way to collaborate on their evening's entertainment. Jinfei immediately shifts her posture, maintaining a respectful but firm distance to avoid any breach of personal space. The persistent socialite offers a confident smile, seemingly unfazed by her clear preference for professional boundaries. He moves to bridge the gap between them once again, his actions becoming increasingly disruptive to the group's decorum. He reaches out toward her with a casual gesture, intending to bring her more fully into the evening's conversation. A sharp, sudden slap echoes through the lounge as He Yuan intervenes, physically blocking the unauthorized contact with a decisive strike. He Yuan pulls Jinfei behind him with a protective, dominant stance, signaling that her professional and personal conduct remains under his exclusive jurisdiction. Lin Yiren leans in with a charming smile, pressing Jinfei to introduce herself so the party can finally begin. A sharp, sudden slap cuts through the air as He Yuan violently strikes his hand away to block the contact. The CEO steps forward with a cold glare, making it clear to his companion that this particular woman is his exclusive property. Lin Yiren raises his hands in mock surrender, maintaining his playful grin despite the physical rejection. He drapes an arm over his friend's shoulder, noting how unusual it is for the stone-faced president to take any woman so seriously. Jinfei feels a sudden rush of warmth, wondering if this possessive display is actually a form of protection. Her heart sinks instantly when He Yuan coldly remarks that Lin can have her once he eventually grows bored of her company. Shifting the focus back to the social event, Lin Yiren mentions his long-standing greed for the CEO's collection of rare, treasured wines. He quickly surrounds himself with a group of admiring socialites, reveling in the attention while maintaining his reputation as a professional flirt. He Yuan offers a short, dismissive response, his patience for the evening's festivities clearly wearing thin. The group checks their phones as the night progresses, the digital glow highlighting the passage of time in the exclusive lounge. A decanter of expensive spirits sits untouched on the table, surrounded by empty glasses waiting for the technical service to begin. Lin Yiren puts on a show of mock disappointment, lamenting the fact that his glass remains empty despite the crowded room. He casts a sidelong glance toward the quiet designer, his eyes narrowing as he prepares to test the CEO's true feelings. Jinfei sits isolated on the edge of the yellow sofa, her gaze fixed firmly on the floor, to avoid any further social friction. He Yuan watches her with a calculating expression, weighing the impact of his next move against her stubborn silence. He breaks the tension by ordering Jinfei to step up and handle the wine service for Lin, since she won't allow the other guests to approach. Stunned by the sudden command to act as a servant, Jinfei can only stare at him in a state of absolute disbelief. Her hand tightens into a white-knuckled fist, her frustration boiling over at being treated like a common waitress. She bites her lip to hold back a sharp retort, realizing she has no choice but to follow his administrative instructions. Forcing a polite and professional smile, she announces that she will be happy to assist Mr. Lin with his request. She leans forward with a steady hand, focusing all her attention on the technical task of pouring the vintage wine. Jinfei maintains a strictly professional demeanor, refusing to let her internal turmoil show on her face. He Yuan observes her from the corner of his eye, his expression unreadable as he monitors her performance. He takes a slow sip of his own drink, his cold exterior masking whatever thoughts he has about her compliance. Lin Yiren watches the interaction with a smug grin, satisfied that he's finally seen a crack in the CEO's untouchable armor. Lin Yiren watches the CEO with a knowing smirk, surprised that a man as cold as He Yuan would ever show such intense interest in a woman. He admits to himself that seeing He Yuan so protective only makes his own curiosity about the designer grow. He Yuan lets out a sharp, dismissive scoff as he focuses on his drink, refusing to engage in his friend's playful banter. His hand moves with predatory speed, targeting Jinfei before she can distance herself any further. He clamps his hand around her wrist in a vice-like grip, asserting his total physical authority over her. He leans in with a chilling intensity, making it clear to everyone in the room that this woman is his exclusive prey. Lin Yiren raises his hands in a playful shrug, signaling his willingness to back down for the time being. The two men reach a grim understanding, agreeing that Jinfei remains He Yuan's property until he eventually grows tired of her. Without another word, He Yuan commands Jinfei to follow him, dragging her away from the prying eyes of the club guests. Jinfei reflexively tries to break away, her body tensing as she fights against his overwhelming strength. She stares at him with a look of pure shock, her composure finally breaking under the weight of his public possessiveness. He Yuan corners her in a more private area, demanding to know why she lacks the basic sense to protect herself from other men's advances. He narrows his eyes in a suspicious glare, accusing her of using the situation as a desperate ploy to escape his control. Jinfei can only stare back at him in stunned silence, her voice failing her as she faces his irrational administrative fury. She casts her gaze downward, her face a mask of exhaustion as she realizes there is no winning against his twisted logic. He Yuan grabs her by the arms and shakes her slightly, demanding an immediate answer to his accusations. Sensing the rising tension, Lin Yiren calls out to them from the lounge, attempting to break the heavy atmosphere. He settles back into his seat among the socialites, questioning why He Yuan is being so unnecessarily harsh during a night of relaxation. He Yuan responds with a bitter, one-word dismissal, his temper still simmering just below the surface. The social scene continues around them as a guest takes a seat on the sofa, maintaining the strictly professional social standards of the venue. Lin Yiren laughs off the awkwardness, quickly redirecting the group's focus toward their evening entertainment. He Yuan gives a curt nod of agreement, signaling that he is finished with his public reprimand for now. He forces Jinfei to sit at his side, closing the gap between them to ensure she remains under his constant, watchful eye. Jinfei desperately pushes against the CEO's chest, pleading for him to stop his relentless physical intimidation. He Yuan merely offers a mocking smirk, asking if he truly overstepped any boundaries during their professional outing. He turns his attention to the socialite clinging to his arm, seemingly indifferent to the distress he just caused his designer. Jinfei watches him with a heavy gaze, realizing that the man standing before her is far more complex and dangerous than she first imagined. Lin Yiren observes the unfolding drama from the sidelines, finding the power struggle between the boss and his employee deeply intriguing. He raises a glass of vintage red, teasingly asking how his friend can find the heart to be so demanding toward such a delicate professional beauty. He Yuan's eyes narrow into a cold, calculating glare as he shifts his focus toward his intrusive companion. A subtle, dangerous smile plays across his lips as he prepares a sharp-witted response to the unwanted commentary. He suggests that perhaps he should call Lin's father to report on his son's current social conduct, effectively silencing the playboy's meddling. The threat hits Lin Yiren like a bolt of lightning, his playful confidence instantly replaced by a wave of pure panic. He breaks into a cold sweat at the mere thought of facing his father's strict administrative wrath over his evening escapades. The surrounding guests quickly move in to soothe him, encouraging him to ignore the threat and return to the night's festivities. Lin Yiren attempts to regain his composure, noting with a forced grin how well the socialites managed to navigate the group's complex technical dynamics. He dismisses the tension with a final wave of his hand, insisting that the group should focus entirely on enjoying their expensive refreshments. He Yuan lets out a sharp, audible scoff of annoyance, clearly unimpressed by the shallow social maneuvering happening around him. A blonde socialite suddenly barks an order at Jinfei, demanding that she fulfill her assigned role by pouring more wine for the table. She sneers at the designer, accusing her of acting far too important simply because she's caught the professional interest of a powerful man. Jinfei chooses to ignore the petty insult entirely, stepping forward to prioritize her technical service to He Yuan instead. He Yuan stands shivering under a heavy towel, the realization hitting him like a physical blow that Jinfei never learned how to stay afloat. Lin Yiren watches the rippling water with a look of pure disbelief, unable to fathom why the CEO would risk his life for a mere employee. He watches the surface break once more, stunned that the cold-hearted executive has plunged back into the depths for the sake of a woman. Beneath the surface, Jinfei drifts into a peaceful state of mind, admiring the sunlight filtering through the water as her strength fades. Her vision begins to blur as a heavy exhaustion takes hold, her eyelids fluttering closed in the quiet embrace of the lake. Just as she begins to slip away, He Yuan's powerful arms wrap around her, determined to pull her back from the brink of the dark abyss. On the shore, the onlookers wait in a tense, suffocating silence, terrified by the lack of movement from the water's surface. Lin Yeren turns a cold, sharp gaze toward the instigator, warning her that she'll be the next one in the water if the pair doesn't return safely. The water finally erupts as He Yuan breaks the surface, holding the unconscious designer close to his chest to keep her head above the waves. The crowd of socialites gasps in shock, pointing frantically as the two figures emerge from the freezing depths without a single word to the stunned audience. He Yuan carries her back toward the estate, his focus entirely on her technical recovery. He passes Lin Yeren with a look of pure, unadulterated venom, his patience for his friend's games having completely evaporated. Lin Yeren realizes in an instant that he has pushed his luck too far, sensing the catastrophic shift in the CEO's temperament. He Yuan pauses just long enough to deliver a final, chilling promise of retribution if Jinfei's health is permanently compromised. He continues toward the mansion with a steady, protective stride, leaving the chaotic social gathering far behind them. Lin Yeren stands frozen in place, a cold sweat breaking out as he processes the unprecedented level of care He Yuan is showing. A small, knowing smile tugs at his lips as he reflects on the fact that he has finally seen the legendary president lose his professional cool. The scene shifts to the quiet luxury of the executive's private residence, where the night's drama is far from over. A medical professional bursts through the bedroom doors, loudly questioning why he's been summoned for such an urgent, late-night technical consultation. He stops dead in his tracks, his eyes widening at the sight of the CEO personally attending to a woman in his own private quarters. The doctor takes a moment to process the shocking visual evidence, his mind racing to understand the nature of this unique domestic situation. He Yuan pushes the door open further, his expression stern as he commands his friend to focus on the patient instead of his own curiosity. A vein pulses in the CEO's forehead as he struggles to maintain his administrative composure, while his designer remains unresponsive. The doctor is struck by a wave of pure astonishment, realizing that the rumors are true and He Yuan has finally brought a woman into his inner sanctum. He Yuan stands over the bed, staring down at the unconscious Jinfei as he grapples with the shocking realization that he might actually have feelings for her. Jinfei remains perfectly still, her face pale but calm as she slowly recovers from the trauma of the freezing lake. The doctor peeks back into the room one last time to reassure the CEO that her fainting was merely a result of physical shock. She offers a playful wave and a quick word of advice before making her final exit for the night. He Yuan watches her leave with a look of pure irritation, the heavy bedroom door slamming shut behind her. Left alone in the silence, he gazes down at his designer, his mind clouded with unfamiliar and conflicting emotions. He leans over her, finding the sudden shift in his protective instincts both baffling and undeniable. Jinfei's eyelids slowly flutter open as she finally regains consciousness in the quiet luxury of the private residence. He Yuan softens his expression instantly, offering a rare moment of gentleness as he asks if she needs a drink of water. He moves to the bedside table to pour a fresh glass of water, prioritizing her physical recovery above all else. With a steady hand, he passes the glass over to ensure she remains properly hydrated after her ordeal. He recalls the doctor's technical warning that a late-night fever remains a significant risk for a drowning victim. He leans in close to monitor her condition, his sudden proximity catching the disoriented Jinfei completely off guard. Jinfei's heart races as she misinterprets his focused gaze for a much more personal advance in the heat of the moment. He Yuan simply presses his palm firmly against her forehead, performing a standard check for any signs of a rising temperature. Realizing he was only concerned for her health, Jinfei looks away in a fit of extreme, wide-eyed embarrassment. She sits frozen on the bed, her face flushed as she tries to process her own wild, inaccurate imagination. He Yuan catches her reaction and asks with a knowing smirk why she suddenly turned so red. He remains seated by her side, the air in the room thick with an unspoken shift in their administrative dynamic. He runs a hand through his hair, joking that she's far too good at ruining the mood of his professional care. He exits the room with a sharp bang of the door, leaving her alone to deal with her own frantic thoughts. Jinfei dives under the blankets and hides, mortified that her stomach chose that exact moment to let out a loud rumble. She reflects on the uncharacteristic softness he showed while checking her fever, wondering if her near-death experience changed his heart. He Yuan soon returns to the bedroom, this time carrying a steaming tray of carefully prepared nourishment. A bowl of hearty, warm noodles sits on the tray, provided to help her regain her physical strength after the chill of the lake. Jinfei accepts the meal with a look of stunned gratitude, unable to believe the cold CEO is serving her personally. As she takes a bite, a genuine smile spreads across her face, making her wonder if this entire evening is just a beautiful, impossible dream. Jinfei looks up from the tray, her voice soft as she asks if he truly prepared this meal with his own hands. Her imagination runs wild as she envisions him in the kitchen, her eyes sparkling with a newfound sense of admiration. He Yuan lets out a dry, awkward cow, quickly averting his gaze as he announces he has technical work to finish in his study. The heavy door clicks shut, leaving the designer alone with her thoughts and the steaming bowl of noodles. She stares down at the professional presentation of the meal, touched by the effort the cold CEO put into her recovery. Tears of gratitude well up in her eyes as she realizes just how much his technical care means to her. The following morning, Jinfei attempts to sneak out of the residence, only to find He Yuan waiting for her with a sharp administrative inquiry. She blinks in surprise, questioning why he hasn't already departed for his high-level corporate meetings. He Yuan crosses arms firmly, refusing to let her dodge the question regarding her intended destination. Fidgeting with her hair, she admits that she needs to visit her mother at the hospital to check on her technical medical status. He Yuan commands her to finish her breakfast first, declaring that he will personally escort her to the facility. The pair arrives at the pristine outpatient building, the sun reflecting off the glass of the modern medical center. They walk through the halls side by side, creating a striking image of professional elegance that draws every eye in the corridor. Jinfei's mother looks up from her hospital bed, her face lighting up with curiosity at the sight of the handsome stranger. Jinfei struggles to find the right words to explain their complex professional arrangement to her ailing parent. With a confident, charming smile, He Yuan introduces himself and boldly claims the title of Jinfei's boyfriend. A deep crimson flush creeps across Jinfei's face as the weight of his public lie hits her like a physical shock. He Yuan leans in with a playful glint in his eye, teasingly asking why she's suddenly acting so flustered in front of her mother. She forces a polite, strained smile, determined to maintain a sense of domestic peace for her mother's sake. The older woman's expression shifts to concern as she asks how they managed to secure the massive technical fees for her upcoming surgery. She clasps her daughter's hand tightly, apologizing for becoming such a heavy administrative burden on her life. Jinfei tries to explain the financial situation honestly, mentioning that the funds were provided as a generous loan from the CEO. He Yuan immediately interacts, insisting that his resources are hers to use and that no technical debt exists between them. Jinfei seethes internally, annoyed by how effortlessly he's managed to adopt the persona of a perfect, caring partner. He reaches out and places his hand over hers in a display of calculated, professional affection. Jinfei's eyes widen in shock at the sudden physical contact, her heart racing at his bold social maneuvering. The mother beams with joy, her heart warmed by the sight of her daughter in such capable and loving hands. Behind her mask of polite silence, Jinfei curses the CEO for his incredible ability to play the role of a hero when it suits his agenda. The heavy silence of the hospital room is suddenly broken by the sharp, rhythmic buzzing of He Yuan's smartphone. The CEO pulls the device from his pocket, noting a persistent incoming call from a contact named Xiao Jiangli. Without a hint of hesitation, he taps the screen to reject the call, prioritizing the sensitive situation at hand over outside interference. He steps toward Jinfei with a deliberate, imposing stride, his shadow falling over her as she looks up in surprise. Jinfei lets out an audible huff of annoyance, her cheeks puffing out as she bristles against his overbearing administrative proximity. He Yuan ignores her temper and offers a reassuring smile to her mother, promising that he will take personal responsibility for Jinfei's well-being. The designer's eyes bulge in a moment of pure, comedic shock as she struggles to process her mother's enthusiastic approval of the lie. The older woman's expression quickly shifts to one of deep contemplation, her gaze drifting as she ponders the complex future ahead. He Yuan watches the exchange with narrowed eyes, his sharp intuition telling him that Jinfei is still guarding a trove of personal secrets. Regaining her composure, the mother offers a gentle smile and urges the pair to return to their high-stakes professional duties. Jinfei glances toward the window, noticing that the bright afternoon sun has already surrendered to the deep shadows of the evening. Standing outside the medical facility, she rests a hand on her chin as she sinks into a state of heavy, internal reflection. He Yuan studies her silent profile with a furrowed brow, demanding to know exactly what technical concerns are currently clouding her mind. She brushes his inquiry aside with a stoic expression, reminding him of his urgent work and insisting she can manage her own commute. He Yuan accepts her dismissal with a cold nod, turning his back to head toward the luxury vehicle waiting at the curb. Jinfei waves him off with a forced, cheerful grin, maintaining the facade of a grateful partner until he is out of sight. The moment the car pulls away, her face contorts into a determined scowl as she prepares to pivot to her own secret agenda. She pulls her phone from her pocket, the screen's harsh glow illuminating her face against the dark, starlit sky. The CEO's sedan accelerates through the quiet parking lot, leaving the designer behind to navigate the night on her own terms. Settled into the back seat, He Yuan delivers a sharp command to his driver to proceed immediately to the Jasmine restaurant. The chauffeur glances back with a look of professional curiosity, asking if they should wait for the young madam to accompany them. He Yuan shuts down the inquiry with a curt no, stating that he has far more severe and pressing troubles to resolve tonight. He leans forward with a mask of grim intensity, his mind already calculating the tactical moves required for his upcoming confrontation. Back at the hospital entrance, Jinfei stares at her device with a look of weary resignation, reminding herself that she must endure this grueling double life to satisfy her crushing technical debts. Jinfei introduces herself formally, her gaze steady despite the unexpected and jarring encounter. She stands firm before the CEO, clutching the restaurant's menu like a shield against his piercing judgment. Hee-yuan crosses his arms in a defensive stance, his voice dripping with icy confusion as he demands to know the reason for her presence. His eyes narrow into sharp slits, scanning her every move for a hint of deception or a hidden motive. Jinfei stands in the middle of the dining room, her new waitress uniform a stark contrast to her usual designer attire. Just 2 hours prior, she was on the phone, desperately searching for a way to secure extra funds for her mounting obligations. A spark of excitement had lit up her face when she learned of an immediate opening at the prestigious Jasmine restaurant. Now, the reality of the situation hits her like a physical blow, her professional composure beginning to fracture. She finds herself standing at the very table where the CEO is hosting a private dinner with a mysterious female companion. Jinfei counters his interrogation with a sharp question of her own, wondering why he isn't currently at the office. The air between them crackles with an unspoken tension as they engage in a silent battle of wills. The woman across the table watches the exchange with growing intrigue, noting the unprecedented way Hee-yuan interacts with the staff. Her gaze sharpens as she analyzes the subtle shift in the CEO's usually untouchable demeanor. She calmly stirs her beverage, the clinking of the spoon against the porcelain the only sound in the sudden silence. Breaking the standoff, she addresses Hee-yuan directly, reminding him with a gentle tone that she is ready to dine. Jinfei quickly pivots back to her technical duties, her voice professional as she offers to take their dinner order. She maintains a polite, practiced smile while preparing her notepad to record their culinary selections. Hee-yuan doesn't even glance at the menu, instead issuing a curt command to bring their usual sequence of dishes. Caught off guard by his familiarity with the establishment, Jinfei can only offer a stunned, hesitant response. She quickly retreats toward the kitchen, her feet moving in a blur as she rushes to fulfill the administrative request. The mysterious guest follows her departure with a calculating look, her mind racing with questions about this peculiar waitress. She turns her attention back to the man sitting across from her, searching for any crack in his stoic facade. Hee-yuan wastes no time on pleasantries, bluntly asking what specific business brought her to seek him out this evening. She explains that their families are pushing for a closer professional cooperation, using his mother's wishes as a strategic leverage. A ghost of a smile touches Hee-yuan's lips, though his eyes remain as cold and calculating as ever. They sit in the center of the dimly lit restaurant, the image of a perfect corporate alliance for any onlooker to see. Meanwhile, Jinfei focuses on the technical accuracy of the order at the service station, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. Despite her concentration, a single, nagging question burns in her mind about the true nature of Hee-yuan's elegant dinner date. The evening settles over the elegant exterior of the Jasmine restaurant. As the dinner service concludes, Hee-yuan exits the establishment, maintaining a professional distance from his persistent companion. Jinru looks up expectantly, inquiring about his administrative schedule for the remainder of the evening. Hee-yuan offers a curt dismissal, citing urgent family obligations that require his immediate attention. Without a second glance, he strides toward his vehicle, leaving the socialite standing alone in the shadows. Jinru's expression hardens as she questions the identity of the waitress who disrupted their technical meeting. A crescent moon hangs high above the city, marking the late hour of this professional confrontation. Jinfei hurries through the streets, bracing herself for the CEO's inevitable administrative lecture. She finds a moment of inner peace, reflecting on the successful completion of her first technical shift. Her senior colleagues had praised her efficiency earlier, validating her decision to seek additional revenue. She lets out a soft laugh at her own luck, unaware of the figure waiting in the darkness of the estate. A cold, familiar voice cuts through the air, demanding an explanation for her sudden amusement. Jinfei nearly jumps out of her skin as the CEO reveals his presence with startling efficiency. Her heart hammers against her ribs while she struggles to find a logical excuse for her late arrival. Hee-yuan stands firm, his gaze boring into her as he notes her return to the residence. She stammers out a weak explanation regarding heavy traffic, hoping to deflect his administrative scrutiny. Hee-yuan closes the distance, initiating a firm technical interrogation regarding her unauthorized employment. His hand strikes the wall beside her head, effectively cutting off any potential escape route. Jinfei stares back in shock, her eyes wide as she processes his intense focus on her career choices. She winces under the pressure of his gaze, her professional facade crumbling in an instant. Hee-yuan demands the truth, forcing her to admit her desperate need for increased financial liquidity. Hee-yuan freezes for a fraction of a second, his sharp eyes widening as her question about his dinner companion catches him completely off guard. A slow, confident smirk spreads across his face as he finds a tactical opening to turn the administrative tables on her. He reaches out and gently tilts her chin upward, his gaze locked onto hers as he playfully asks if she's actually feeling jealous. The weight of the accusation hits Jinfei like a falling boulder, leaving her stunned and struggling to process such a ridiculous claim. She immediately erupts into a frantic state of denial, her arms flailing as she insists that she has no personal interest in his social life. She crosses her arms and puffs out her cheeks in a display of pure, irritated defiance, refusing to look him in the eye. Hee-Yuan watches her temper flare with a look of quiet amusement, finding her exaggerated frustration surprisingly endearing. Jinfei catches the faint glint of laughter in his expression and seethes, realizing he's merely enjoying her discomfort. He reaches into his pocket and produces a sleek, black secondary credit card, extending it toward her with a steady hand. Jinfei blinks in total confusion, her mind swirling with question marks as she stares at the high-limit financial tool. Hee-Yuan's expression hardens into a professional mask as he asks if she's genuinely unaware of the card's technical function. He explains that this is his secondary account and commands her to quit her restaurant job immediately to focus on her primary duties. She looks down at the card with a heavy heart, her conscience telling her that she cannot possibly accept any more financial charity from him. Shrinking under the weight of his overbearing presence, she finds herself too intimidated to argue against his administrative decree. She quickly mumbles a polite goodnight. Desperate to escape the suffocating intensity of the foyer, she bolts toward the staircase, her feet flying as she puts as much distance between herself and the CEO as possible. The heavy sound of her bedroom door clicking shut echoes through the hall, marking her temporary retreat from the confrontation. Leaning against the wood, she catches her breath and wonders how she's supposed to navigate these increasingly complex professional boundaries. Later that evening, she wanders back into the main corridor, her mind still racing with the implications of the CEO's unexpected generosity. She spots Assistant Key struggling through the hall, his arms nearly overflowing with a massive stack of technical reports. She tilts her head in curiosity, wondering why the administrative staff is still performing such heavy labor at this late hour. Stepping forward with a helpful smile, she offers to lighten his load by carrying a portion of the daunting paperwork. He offers a weary but grateful smile, explaining that both he and Mr. He have been forced to work overtime to manage a surge in corporate cases. He adds with a sigh that his job is difficult enough without having to constantly mediate the personal friction between her and the boss. Jinfei's gaze softens as she realizes the CEO is actually buried in technical tasks, rather than monitoring her every move. The pair walks together through the modern, glass-walled walkway, their silhouettes framed against the quiet evening lights of the city. He stops near the executive suite and takes the files back, warning her that appearing near the office might trigger another administrative outburst from Hee-Yuan. She watches him walk away toward the light of the study, noting the heavy atmosphere of a high-stakes corporate night. A clever spark ignites in her eyes as she realizes that if the CEO is occupied with work, she can safely return to her secret night shift at the restaurant. Qi Zheng introduces himself as the elite chief assistant to the powerful Hee-Yuan. He prides himself on his legendary technical competence and his ability to adapt to any corporate crisis. For years, he stood at the peak of the company, basked in the glow of the CEO's absolute professional trust. But everything changed the moment Jinfei entered the picture, disrupting his carefully maintained administrative balance. He feels as though his stable, high-ranking life has suddenly plummeted off a metaphorical cliff. Back in the office, Hee-Yuan's hands are tightly interlaced as he demands a status report on Jinfei's secret whereabouts. His eyes burn with a cold, terrifying intensity upon hearing the report that she is currently working in a local bar. The CEO sits shrouded in a dark aura of dissatisfaction while Qi stands by, trembling under the weight of a massive stack of reports. Hee-Yuan's voice drops to a lethal whisper as he interrogates his assistant about how long this unauthorized employment has been going on. With a sudden, explosive movement, the CEO sweeps his arm across the desk, in a display of pure administrative fury. Qi gasps in shock as the mountain of technical documents begins to rustle and fly wildly into the air. Hee-Yuan glares through the falling paper, promising his assistant that he will face a severe performance review for this oversight later tonight. He storms out of the executive suite, leaving a trail of scattered paperwork in his wake as he heads for the exit. Across the city, the sugar bar glows under the cold light of a crescent moon, hiding the chaos within its walls. Inside the dim establishment, an unruly customer collapses onto a table surrounded by empty liquor bottles. The man clutches a bottle with a shaking hand, his behavior becoming increasingly volatile as the night progresses. Jinfei approaches the table with professional poise, balancing a tray of premium beverages for his technical consideration. The drunkard looks up with a sneer, rudely dismissing her attempt to fulfill her hospitality duties. Despite the hostility, she maintains a polite smile and attempts to explain the current promotional discounts available on the menu. A sinister, mocking grin spreads across the man's face as he prepares to escalate his aggressive behavior. He suddenly lunges forward and seizes her arm with a firm grip, ignoring her warning that she will contact the authorities. The man laughs, hurling cruel insults at her profession and offering a pathetic sum of cash, as if her dignity had a price tag. Jinfei's eyes well with tears as the weight of his verbal assault crushes her remaining professional composure. A low, dangerous voice suddenly cuts through the noise, repeating the man's insults back to him with icy, calculated precision. Jinfei looks up in total disbelief, her heart stopping as she realizes that He Yuan has personally arrived to witness her humiliation. He Yuan's voice drops to a chilling low as he echoes the drunkard's venomous insults back to him with a terrifying, calculated precision. Jinfei's eyes shimmer with unshed tears as she looks up, her breath hitching at the CEO's sudden and imposing arrival. The air in the club turns frigid as He Yuan towers over the unruly customer, his presence radiating an aura of absolute authority. He narrows his eyes in a mask of silent, lethal judgment, making it clear that his patience for this technical disruption has reached its limit. The drunkard's throat tightens as he swallows hard, the realization of his dire situation finally beginning to sink in. His face contorts in a mixture of confusion and terror as he tries to process the identity of the high-powered man now dominating the room. With a sharp, dismissive motion, He Yuan prepares to clear the path and settle the administrative chaos once and for all. He shoves the aggressor aside with effortless strength, issuing a curt command for Assistant Qi to handle the necessary disciplinary cleanup. Turning his back on the mess, the CEO radiates a cold indifference that signals the end of the public confrontation. Jinfei watches him with a trembling gaze, her heart racing as she waits for his inevitable reaction to her presence in the bar. He Yuan begins to walk away with a stiff, professional gait, leaving Jinfei to scramble behind him in a state of nervous apprehension. He suddenly reaches back and seizes her wrist with a firm, ironclad grip that brooks no argument. Jinfei's expression shifts to one of pure, wide-eyed shock as she is caught in the wake of his sudden, forceful movement. Without a single word, he begins to drag her toward the exit, his focus entirely on removing her from the unprofessional environment. Qi Zhang watches them go with a look of wary sympathy, offering a silent wish of good luck for the grueling lecture awaiting the young designer. A sharp, calculating glint flashes in the darkness as the final details of the night's administrative punishment are set into motion. The drunkard wails in despair as he is hauled away by a pair of stoic security personnel to face the technical consequences of his actions. Outside, the city streets are bathed in the cold, clinical glow of the street lamps, marking the transition to a more private confrontation. He Yuan corners Jinfei against a cold stone wall, his posture radiating an overwhelming sense of executive dominance. He leans in close, his voice a low growl as he demands to know exactly what technical logic led her to return to this dangerous workplace. Jinfei averts her gaze, her face burning with a mix of guilt and professional embarrassment as she struggles to find a valid excuse. He Yuan's eyes burn with an intense, unyielding fire, searching her features for even a hint of genuine remorse. He closes the distance between them with a sudden, overwhelming proximity to ensure his message about her safety is heard loud and clear. Tears well up in Jinfei's eyes once more, the weight of his overbearing concern clashing with her own sense of independence. She pushes against his chest with a flustered expression, desperate to re-establish a sense of professional distance between them. Ignoring her protests, He Yuan grabs her hand with a determined force and begins to guide her toward his waiting vehicle. The luxury sedan peels away from the curb, its headlights cutting through the shadows as they leave the scene of the incident behind. Above, the moon hangs silent and indifferent, a lone witness to the shifting dynamics of their complex corporate partnership. Meanwhile, the drunkard finds himself in a humiliating predicament, tied up and forced to endure a public performance of his own making. A crowd gathers to capture the spectacle on their phones, ensuring that his unprofessional behavior results in a lasting and public record of his failure. Jinfei curls up on her bed, overwhelmed by the night's chaotic events. She stares blankly, her mind racing with the consequences of her secret job. The memory of He Yuan's intense interrogation at the bar haunts her. She sits in silence, wondering how to handle the CEO's growing interference. Morning light fills the room as she stirs from a restless sleep. Rubbing her eyes, she tries to shake off the lingering stress of her situation. He Yuan enters, curtly ordering her to prepare for a sudden outing. She complies quietly, too exhausted to offer any technical resistance to his command. Dressed and ready, she watches the city pass by from the back of the sedan. Her expression remains guarded as she contemplates their mysterious destination. He Yuan sits beside her in silence, his eyes closed in a rare moment of repose. The tension in the vehicle is palpable as they travel together through the city. He Yuan's sharp gaze momentarily flickers, betraying a hidden administrative concern. The estate stands illuminated against the dark sky, a symbol of corporate power. He Yuan issues a strict command to the household staff to monitor her movements. A sudden vibration interrupts his focus, signaling an incoming technical alert. His phone screen glows with a high-priority call from his father. He answers with practiced professionalism, acknowledging his family's urgent demands. His face darkens as he processes the pressure of the upcoming family meeting. Jinfei notices his unusual distraction and wonders what has shifted his focus. He Yuan extends his hand toward her, offering a silent gesture of assistance. He bluntly announces that he is taking her to meet his parents. Jinfei's composure shatters instantly at the unexpected administrative bombshell. The car practically lurches off the road as Jinfei's internal alarm bells scream in total administrative shock. They arrive at the massive He family estate, a sprawling monument to corporate wealth and historical prestige. Jinfei walks beside He Yuan, her face pale as she realizes the gravity of this high-stakes social presentation. Her fingers tremble, tightly clutching the fabric of her dress, in a desperate attempt to steady her nerves. He Yuan glances over with a cool, analytical gaze, questioning why his technical partner is suddenly paralyzed with fear. She looks away with a pained expression, worrying that her lack of a formal gift will be seen as a major professional oversight. A finger reaches out to press the doorbell, signaling the start of this daunting administrative meeting. Jinfei takes a deep, shaky breath, mentally bracing herself to perform the most important role of her life. She forces a bright, polite smile onto her face as she offers a formal greeting to the CEO's parents. He Yuan's mother immediately reaches out, her warm touch surprising Jinfei with an unexpected display of hospitality. The matriarch beams with genuine delight, explaining that they have been eager to meet the woman who finally caught He Yuan's attention. She launches into an enthusiastic, rapid-fire lecture about family history that leaves Jinfei feeling completely overwhelmed. Jinfei wipes a bead of sweat from her brow, cautiously optimistic that she might actually survive this technical evaluation. The group settles into the grand living room, the atmosphere thick with the unspoken weight of corporate expectations. A pair of sharp, violet eyes suddenly narrow in a cold, calculating scan of Jinfei's technical profile. A mysterious young woman in a floral dress offers a polite smile, though her presence adds a new layer of complexity to the room. Jinfei's mind races as she studies the stranger, certain she has seen this face in a previous professional context. He Yuan's father remains stoic while his mother shifts the conversation toward more personal administrative details. She sips her tea with practiced grace before inquiring about Jinfei's family background and her history with He Yuan. Jinfei feels the pressure mounting, her forced smile beginning to crack under the weight of the interrogation. She carefully chooses her words, admitting that her professional relationship with the CEO has been relatively brief. Her gaze drops to the floor as she reveals the harsh reality of her mother's illness and her role as the sole provider. He Yuan watches her from the corner of his eye, his expression unreadable as he listens to her honest disclosure. A heavy, uncomfortable silence falls over the parents as they process the technical details of her difficult home life. The patriarch clasps his hands together, coldly stating that the family has already finalized a more suitable fiancé for his son. His mother looks on with a somber expression, confirming that this administrative decision has been set in stone for years. He Yuan's jaw tightens as he prepares to mount a fierce defense against his father's rigid corporate planning. He suddenly slams his hands onto the marble coffee table, the sound echoing through the room like a technical explosion. The sudden outburst sends a shockwave through the room, leaving the parents and their guests staring in stunned silence. Sensing an opening in the chaos, Jinfei offers a quick, polite smile and asks for permission to retreat to the restroom. Jinfei lets the cool water run over her hands, trying to wash away the crushing stress of the dinner conversation. She stares at her reflection in the gilded mirror, her mind reeling from the sudden mention of a pre-arranged corporate marriage. A wave of resignation washes over her, as she tells herself she never should have expected anything more from this temporary arrangement. Taking a steadying breath, she reaches for the ornate door handle to return to the administrative lion's den. The door swings open only for her path to be blocked by the mysterious woman in the floral dress. The stranger sneers, immediately identifying Jinfei as the waitress from the bar and making a sharp, derogatory comment about her professional conduct. Jinfei's eyes widen in disbelief as she processes the sheer audacity of the woman's verbal hostility. Despite the insult, she forces a tight, polite smile while a vein of frustration pulses at her temple. The guest looks back with a cold, superior gaze, clearly unimpressed by Jinfei's attempt at maintaining her composure. She continues her verbal attack with a sharp tongue, demanding to know why a low-level worker thinks she belongs at such a high-stakes dinner. Jinfei closes her eyes for a brief moment, mentally reciting her professional protocols to avoid causing a public scene. She calmly retorts that if the guest wants to secure a position, she should focus her attention on the CEO, rather than throwing insults. With a dismissive glance, Jinfei brushes past her, leaving the woman fuming at the sudden lack of administrative deference. Back in the dining room, the atmosphere remains thick with the weight of tradition and heavy corporate expectation. He Yuan's mother leans toward the guest, warmly encouraging her to spend more professional time with her son in the coming weeks. The woman, Jinru, adopts a humble facade, claiming she doesn't want to disrupt the CEO's busy technical schedule. Jinfei picks at her food in silence, privately marveling at the guest's incredible talent for administrative acting. The matriarch remains firm, insisting that as the official fiancé, Jinru must maintain a constant presence by his side. The patriarch wipes his mouth with a napkin, coldly stating that this union is essential for the strategic growth of the Shangguan group. Jinfei's heart sinks as the reality of the impending marriage is confirmed with such technical finality. Under the table, He Yuan's hand clenches into a tight fist, his patience for these rigid family mandates finally snapping. He suddenly stands up, his imposing silhouette casting a long shadow over the remains of the formal dinner. He stares down his father, declaring with ice-cold precision that his personal life is not a business asset to be traded. Jinfei watches in stunned silence as the CEO prepares to launch a full-scale rebellion against his family's lineage. He turns away from the table, his heavy footsteps echoing through the silent, high-ceilinged room. Without warning, he reaches out and seizes Jinfei's hand in a firm, protective grip that brooks no argument. She looks up at him with wide, questioning eyes, completely caught off guard by his sudden display of public solidarity. Yuan pulls her toward the exit, his expression a mask of absolute determination as he leads her out of the estate. His mother watches them go with a look of pure distress, her voice trailing off as she realizes she's lost control of the situation. A thunderous slam of the front door signals their final departure, leaving the remaining guests in a state of absolute administrative shock. Yuan drives through the silent city streets, the atmosphere inside the luxury set and thick with unresolved tension. Jinfei stares out the window with a heavy heart, questioning why he continues to hold on to her when his parents have already made their disapproval clear. Yuan keeps his eyes on the road, his voice dropping to a low, intense tone as he asks her point-blank if she actually hates him. Her fingers tighten their grip on her dress, her body betraying the internal conflict raging behind her quiet exterior. He narrows his gaze, demanding a serious answer to the technical state of her feelings for him. A soft blush creeps onto Jinfei's cheeks as she finally admits in a small voice that her feelings certainly don't involve hatred. A rare, subtle smile touches Yuan's lips as the crescent moon hangs high above their private sanctuary. The car speeds into the night as he issues a final, protective command for her to simply remain by his side without further worry. Rumors spread like wildfire through the company hallways about Miss Zhao's official status as the president's new fiancée. Staff members whisper in the corners, wondering how this sudden administrative shift will affect Jinfei's standing in the office. The cold, metallic sign on the door marks the entrance to the high-stakes environment of the president's office. Zhao Jinru enters with an air of absolute entitlement, introducing herself to the staff as the woman destined to marry the CEO. Assistant Qi freezes in place, his face contorting into a mask of pure, comedic shock at the sudden appearance of the rival. He looks toward his boss with a nervous sweat, sensing the massive technical fallout that is about to erupt. Yuan remains perfectly composed at his desk, his focus locked onto his administrative duties as if the woman doesn't even exist. Qi's jaw drops even further when he realizes that the CEO hasn't even spared a single glance for his supposed fiancée. The assistant's mind immediately races to Jinfei, fearing the professional chaos this encounter will inevitably cause. With a sharp, dismissive wave, Yuan orders Qi to leave the room and return to his primary technical responsibilities. Yuan continues to review his documents with icy efficiency, warning Jinru that he will not tolerate any disruptions to his workflow. His eyes flash with a dangerous, cold intensity that signals his growing impatience with her presence. Realizing she won't get his attention now, Jinru decides to take a tour of the building, leaving the office with a haughty stride. Alone at last, the CEO stares out at the city skyline, his expression a mask of calculated executive strategy. Jinfei walks through the corridor clutching her latest design reports, unaware that a hostile encounter is literally seconds away. She bristles with annoyance as she spots the woman who caused so much trouble at the family estate. Jinru deliberately brushes past her with a sneer, reminding Jinfei that only those with parental approval have a future in this family. Jinfei's sharp retort catches the socialite off guard, causing her face to twist in a sudden burst of administrative rage. Losing her composure, Jinru lunges forward and seizes Jinfei's arm in a desperate, aggressive grip. The force of the scuffle sends Jinfei's technical documents flying through the air, scattering across the floor. A rival staffer watches the chaotic scene from the shadows, her eyes narrowing as she spots a golden opportunity for sabotage. A high-value jewelry design draft lies vulnerable on the carpet, showcasing Jinfei's immense creative talent. While the two women remain locked in their heated argument, the rival stealthily steals the draft and disappears into the office crowd. Jinfei stands frozen, clutching her documents as she faces an impossibly awkward encounter. Yuan's gaze is sharp and suspicious as he analyzes the tension in the room. Gu, her ex-boyfriend, maintains a confident smirk while looking directly at her. She is trapped between her intimidating boss and the ghost of her past. Yuan breaks the silence, coldly inquiring if the two have a professional history together. Gu boldly confirms their connection while Jinfei frantically tries to deny it. The CEO's temper flares, causing him to snap his pen in a display of raw frustration. Jinfei internally fumes, blaming Gu's arrogance for Yuan's sudden rage. Gu remains unfazed, casually adjusting his hair with practiced nonchalance. Overwhelmed by the technical stress, Jinfei lets out an awkward, forced cuff. She desperately shifts the focus back to the official contract signing. The two men lock eyes in a silent, high-stakes battle of corporate dominance. Gu attempts to bridge the gap, asking for an introduction to the beautiful lady. He Yuan's hand shoots out, clamping down on Gu's arm with administrative force. He physically intercedes, forming a protective barrier between the intruder and Jinfei. With total authority, He Yuan marks his territory by claiming Jinfei as his own. Jinfei's breath hitches in shock at the CEO's blunt, public declaration. He Yuan pulls her close, his smug expression signaling a clear victory over his rival. Gu's face darkens, his features obscured by a shadow of sudden resentment. Once outside, Jinfei hurries away, desperate to escape the lingering administrative drama. Gu intercepts her in the hallway, his sudden appearance catching her off guard. She attempts to maintain a professional distance, signaling that their business is concluded. Gu looms over her, demanding to know why she is avoiding him so aggressively. He questions the technical timeline of her relationship with the wealthy CEO. Jinfei's expression falls, her eyes clouding with the weight of painful memories. Her hand trembles against her bag as she struggles to maintain her composure. She finally snaps, revealing that her past choices were driven by her mother's crisis. A haunting memory flashes back to the moment her mother was struck by a vehicle. Jinfei remembers standing alone at the hospital, facing a life-changing administrative emergency. She turns her back on him, her footsteps echoing with a sense of finality. Gu is left standing in the corridor, stunned by the weight of her hidden truth. He watches her leave, his previous confidence completely shattered by her revelation. He recalls the day they broke up, believing she had simply traded him for a tycoon. The image of her walking away in the rain with another man haunts his mind. Doubts begin to surface as he wonders if he misunderstood the technical reality of their split. Framed photographs on the wall capture the milestones of a life once filled with simple academic goals. Since her youth, Jinfei's sole administrative focus has been the pursuit of a career in professional jewelry design. She achieved her primary objective by graduating with honors, her mother standing proudly by her side during the ceremony. Her fingers reach for her desk, the calendar in the background marked with the rigorous schedule of her professional journey. Now, with a look of absolute determination, she prepares to submit the technical draft that could secure her future. She reaches for her storage folder, eager to finalize the administrative handoff of her latest creative work. Her heart drops as she realizes the critical design document is missing, leaving her in a state of professional shock. A sudden, sharp ringing from the office phone interrupts her frantic search for the stolen technical files. She answers the call with a shaky voice, only to receive a direct administrative command from the CEO's office. Jinfei delivers a sharp, polite knock on the heavy wooden door of the executive suite. He Yuan sits behind his massive desk, his eyes scanning a technical report with his usual cold efficiency. She steps forward to serve the requested beverage, maintaining a strictly professional distance from her employer. Without warning, He Yuan reaches out and firmly intercepts her movement, seizing her wrist in a sudden display of authority. He pulls her toward him to discuss the current workflow, disregarding the traditional boundaries of the office environment. He tilts her face toward his analytical gaze searching for the cause of her obvious administrative distraction. Jinfei avoids his eyes, her expression tightening as she struggles to remain focused on her professional duties. She delivers a sharp, decisive slap to his hand, signaling her refusal to tolerate any further workplace disruptions. Standing tall, she coldly informs the CEO that she must return to her primary technical responsibilities immediately. She turns her back on him and heads for the exit, determined to put an end to this unprofessional interaction. He Yuan's voice drops to a low, dangerous tone as he issues a final warning regarding her current administrative status. He moves with predatory speed, his arm slamming against the door to block her path out of the room. Looming over her, he demands she remember her specific role within the corporate hierarchy of the company. Another knock at the door causes Jinfei to bite her lip, terrified of the potential professional scandal if they are discovered. He Yuan finally steps back to answer the door, granting her a brief reprieve from the high-tension interrogation. Back at her own desk, Jinfei fumes with indignation over the CEO's arrogant and overbearing management style. She closes her eyes and takes a deep breath, forcing her mind to pivot away from him and back to her missing design. Her hand grips a pencil with renewed purpose, ready to begin the grueling task of recreating the draft from memory. As night falls over the city, the lights of the corporate headquarters remain burning bright against the dark sky. Jinfei works tirelessly through the late hours, her focus entirely consumed by the technical reconstruction of her artwork. A pair of heavy, expensive shoes click against the floor as a familiar figure approaches her workstation. He Yuan leans over her shoulder, questioning why she is still engaged in a task she claimed was finished days ago. Exhausted, she rubs her eyes and admits that the original file was lost, leaving her with no choice but to start over. Seeing her struggle, the CEO offers his technical expertise to help accelerate the redrawing process. The two of them sit side by side at the desk, working in a rare moment of collaborative professional harmony. The clock on the wall ticks past midnight, marking the hours of their intense, joint administrative effort. By the time the final stroke is placed, Jinfei is beaming with pride while He Yuan looks on with silent executive approval. An announcer takes the stage, his voice booming as he prepares to reveal the champion of this year's prestigious jewelry design competition. Jinfei lets out a playful giggle as she nudges He Yuan, her morning energy a sharp contrast to his quiet demeanor. He Yuan catches her hand with a subtle, knowing smile, noting how unusually well-behaved she seems after their long night of technical collaboration. Her eyes snap open as the reality of the morning light hits her. The soft haze of sleep instantly replaced by professional urgency. He Yuan suddenly closes the distance to discuss the final technical adjustments, his presence looming over her with an intense administrative focus. He looks down at her with a gaze that demands absolute dedication, suggesting that she owes him a significant favor for his late-night executive assistance. Sitting up in bed, Jinfei offers a sincere word of thanks to the CEO, acknowledging that her design draft would never have been finished without his technical expertise. A sudden bolt of panic flashes across her face as she remembers the strict administrative deadline for the competition submission. She scrambles out of the sheets with desperate haste while He Yuan calmly sips his morning coffee, unfazed by the sudden burst of technical energy. Jinfei looks back over her shoulder, her voice firm as she explains that her career goals are driven by passion rather than financial security. With a look of absolute determination, she declares that becoming a top-tier designer is a lifelong dream she refuses to abandon. The sleek luxury sedan cuts through the urban landscape, racing toward the corporate headquarters where her future hangs in the balance. Jinfei sprints through the lobby, her mind racing as fast as her heart as she checks the time on her administrative schedule. She rounds the corner into the design department, barely pausing to catch her breath before seeking out her supervisor. Breathless, she approaches Director Lin and announces her readiness to officially submit her recreated design draft for the competition. The director looks back with a confused expression, revealing that Assistant Qi has already handled the administrative task on her behalf. A light bulb goes off in Jinfei's head as she realizes that He Yuan must have coordinated the technical handoff while she was still recovering. From the shadows of a nearby doorway, the rival staffer watches in disbelief, clutching the stolen draft and wondering how Jinfei could have possibly submitted a replacement. Unable to contain her shock, the woman steps out to confront Jinfei, her face a mask of poorly concealed administrative frustration. The rival crosses her arms and demands to know how Jinfei could submit a design when she had supposedly lost her original files. Jinfei slowly turns toward her, her eyes narrowing as she processes the suspicious nature of the woman's specific technical knowledge. Caught in a lie, the rival stammers an excuse, claiming she simply heard rumors circulating through the office grapevine. Jinfei's expression hardens as she recalls that she never shared the details of the theft with anyone except the CEO. She extends a steady finger toward the woman, point-blank accusing her of being the one behind the administrative sabotage. The rival's hand trembles with suppressed rage as she realizes her carefully constructed plan is rapidly unraveling. Losing her professional composure entirely, the woman lunges forward to silence Jinfei with a desperate, aggressive gesture. Before she can make contact, a powerful hand shoots out and seizes her wrist with an ironclad executive grip. The rival whirls around with a snarl, demanding to know who has the audacity to interfere with her personal business. He Yuan stands there with an expression of cold, calculating authority, his presence instantly shutting down the chaotic office confrontation. He Yuan looms over the scene with an icy authority that instantly silences the room. The desperate rival points a finger, brazenly claiming Jinfei framed her for the design theft. Jinfei's eyes widen in disbelief at the sheer audacity of the woman's fabricated accusation. Her fingers tighten against her floral dress as she struggles to process this professional betrayal. Without a second thought, He Yuan delivers a lethal executive order. She is fired effective immediately. The former staffer stands paralyzed, her face draining of color as her career crumbles. He Yuan's cold profile signals that his administrative decision is final and non-negotiable. He firmly guides Jinfei away, ignoring the frantic pleas echoing behind them. The defeated rival collapses to the floor, completely broken by the weight of her own sabotage. Back in the office, He Yuan listens as Assistant Qi confirms Jinfei's top ranking in the design competition. His reflection in the window shows a rare look of possessive pride in her technical success. A knowing smirk crosses his face as he commands a special package be prepared for delivery. A sleek, ornate box rests on the desk, holding a reward for her creative perseverance. Qi carefully transports the high-value item, ensuring the administrative surprise remains intact. Jinfei later celebrates with pure joy, her excitement filling the room as she receives the gift. He Yuan watches her with calm satisfaction, leaning back to admire her reaction. She beams with sincere appreciation, her eyes shining as she thanks him for the gesture. The lid opens to reveal a stunning, masterfully crafted necklace gleaming under the light. Jinfei fumbles with the technical difficulty of the clasp, unable to secure the piece herself. He Yuan's steady hands reach forward to provide the necessary assistance with the jewelry. He maintains a focused, professional demeanor while successfully fastening the necklace around her. Jinfei gazes at the pendant, mesmerized by the intricate design and quality of the gift. He Yuan offers a rare gesture of approval, acknowledging the milestone she has finally reached. A nearby photograph of his late grandmother watches over the significant exchange. A subtle smile touches his lips as he realizes the family heirloom has found its proper home. The sun glints off the glass exterior of the hospital's outpatient building, where Jinfei's mother continues her recovery. Inside the quiet ward, Jinfei maintains a strictly supportive role as she carefully assists her mother with a technical meal plan. She beams with professional pride, explaining that her recent victory in the design competition has brought her one step closer to her lifelong goals. Her mother offers a weary smile, expressing administrative concern that her own failing health has become a burden on Jinfei's career. Jinfei huffs with a playful pout, insisting that her mother focus entirely on the recovery process and stop worrying about the logistics. The older woman reaches out with a gentle, appreciative pat on Jinfei's head, acknowledging her daughter's unwavering dedication. Later, Jinfei meets with the lead physician, who confirms that her mother's technical vitals are improving and a discharge date is approaching. With a polite bow of gratitude, she concludes the administrative meeting and prepares to exit the doctor's office. As she navigates the busy hospital corridor, she remains focused on her schedule, unaware of the figure approaching from the opposite direction. A sudden, sharp collision sends a jolt through her as she accidentally bumps into a man's sturdy frame. She immediately offers a flurry of technical apologies, her head bowed in embarrassment over the clumsy workplace interaction. Her breath hitches as she looks up to see Gu Shengyang staring back at her with a look of pure, unadulterated shock. Jinfei quickly recovers her composure, coldly stating that their personal history is over and her presence at the hospital is none of his business. Gu remains silent, his intense gaze searching her face for any sign of the truth she's been hiding. Without warning, he reaches out and seizes her wrist in a sudden display of administrative force. He pins her against the wall, his presence looming over her as he demands to know why she continues to push him away. Jinfei winces as grip tightens, her voice trembling as she begs him to release her immediately. Gu's expression hardens into a mask of cold determination, ignoring her plea as he struggles with his own rising frustration. He maintains his ironclad hold on her arm, refusing to let the conversation end on her terms. Overwhelmed by the high-tension encounter, Jinfei finally snaps, declaring that she has had enough of his constant interference. Gu watches her with a distant, calculating gaze, his mind racing to process her sharp rejection. Moments later, Gu sits in a private examination room as a doctor reviews the results of his latest health screening. His hand grips the edge of the desk with such technical force that his knuckles turn white under the pressure. He rests his chin on his hand, his thoughts completely consumed by the administrative mystery surrounding Jinfei's sudden departure months ago. He recalls the image of her looking exhausted and defeated, a stark contrast to the professional designer she has become. The doctor pauses, sensing the heavy atmosphere and the patient's obvious lack of focus on the medical report. Gu dismisses the physician with a sharp wave, signaling that he has more urgent matters to attend to outside the clinic. Back in his private office, an administrative assistant arrives with a folder containing the confidential background check he requested. The assistant reveals the shocking news that Jinfei's mother was involved in a severe car accident exactly 2 months ago. Gu's jaw tightens as he processes the timeline, realizing the immense technical stress Jinfei has been operating under. His eyes flash with a dangerous intensity as he commands the assistant to reveal the identity of the offending driver. The assistant hesitates before confirming that the driver responsible for the crash was a man named Mr. Wang. Gu's hand begins to tremble as the weight of the revelation hits him like a physical blow. He realizes with horror that the driver was a former employee of the Gu family, linking his own household to the tragedy that ruined Jinfei's life. Inside the corporate headquarters, an assistant provides a final administrative briefing on the progress of the upcoming jewelry press conference. He notes that the CEO's mother specifically requested Miss Zhao to model the new technical design during the main event. Yuan abruptly slams his folder shut, his patience for unsolicited management advice reaching its limit. With a cold, steady gaze, the CEO commands his staff to leave the logistical details to him, as he has already finalized his own professional arrangements. The lights dim as the showcase officially begins, featuring a model walking the runway to display the latest corporate collection. Jinfei takes her seat in the front row, unaware that her rivals are already circling like sharks in the audience. Jinru leans in close, her voice dripping with professional jealousy as she prepares to launch a verbal assault. She seethes internally, unable to comprehend how someone she considers a fox spirit managed to secure such a prominent seat. Turning toward Jinfei with a condescending sneer, Jinru prepares to humiliate her in front of the entire industry. Jinfei remains perfectly composed, refusing to give her antagonist the satisfaction of a visible reaction. Jinru continues her mockery, suggesting that an ordinary designer should recognize their place and feel lucky even to be invited. Jinfei offers a sharp, polite smile, reminding the woman that a professional conference is no place for a public display of petty behavior. The comment hits home, sending Jinru into a silent, cartoonish fury as her carefully crafted mask begins to slip. While the rival fumes in her seat, Jinfei maintains her focus, clearly satisfied with her ability to handle the administrative distraction. Attempting to regain her status, Jinru adjusts her jewelry and dismisses Jinfei as nothing more than a common laborer. Jinfei completely ignores the insult, instead mentally reviewing the technical proportions of the diamonds on the runway. Enraged by the lack of attention, Jinru reaches out and aggressively grabs Jinfei's shoulder to force a confrontation. He Yuan, sitting nearby, casts a sharp and chilling glance toward the disruption, his eyes filled with executive disapproval. Jinfei decisively shakes off the unwanted contact, signaling that she will not tolerate any physical interference during the show. Realizing she is being watched, Jinru quickly feigns a look of injured innocence, accusing Jinfei of being impolite. Jinfei turns back with a look of pure indifference, stating that she simply has no desire to waste any more professional breath on the matter. The rejection leaves Jinru speechless, her face a mask of utter disbelief at being dismissed so casually. He Yuan finally intervenes with a low, commanding voice, ordering both women to remain silent and focus on the presentation. Jinru sinks back into her chair, her frustration boiling over as she is forced to comply with his administrative authority. She maintains a smug, internal confidence, convinced that she is still the most important guest in the room. He Yuan takes the stage with a microphone in hand, ready to announce a special guest for the final technical display. The audience falls into a hushed silence, the silhouettes of the crowd waiting with bated breath for the big reveal. Beside her, an associate nudges Jinru, urging her to prepare for what they assume is her scheduled moment of glory. He Yuan extends his hand toward the front row, his gesture signaling a direct invitation to join him on stage. Jinru stands up with a triumphant smile, fully expecting to be the one he is calling forward. The CEO's gaze bypasses her entirely as he warmly calls out Jinfei's name, shocking everyone in attendance. Jinfei freezes in place with a look of stunned realization, while Jinru's expression collapses into a state of total administrative shock. He Yuan extends a firm executive hand, inviting Jinfei to step into the spotlight of the main stage. He carefully presents the centerpiece of the collection, a necklace that radiates with high-end technical brilliance. Maintaining a strictly professional focus, the CEO helps secure the intricate clasp around her neck as the crowd watches in silence. The duo stands side by side on the runway, marking a major turning point in Jinfei's technical career. From the audience, Jinru watches with a look of pure administrative envy, unable to believe Jinfei is the center of attention. Her eyes narrow into a sharp glare as she focuses her rage on the woman who has successfully upstaged her. After the presentation, Jinfei finds a quiet corner in the banquet hall to finally catch her breath after the intense technical showcase. A hand suddenly tilts a glass of red wine, the liquid poised to disrupt the peaceful moment. A sudden splash of wine douses Jinfei's hair, catching her completely off guard during her momentary break. Jinru stands over her with a smug, malicious expression, clearly satisfied with her unprofessional act of sabotage. Without missing a beat, Jinfei grabs Jinru's expensive shawl to wipe away the mess, leaving the rival staffer in a state of comedic shock. Losing her last shred of professional composure, Jinru raises her hand to deliver a desperate, physical strike. Her heel loses its grip on the slick, wine-covered floor, causing her to lose her technical balance. Jinru collapses onto the hard tiles with a sharp cry, her plan for a physical confrontation backfiring instantly. He Yuan and his mother enter the room just in time to find the scene in a state of total administrative chaos. Jinru immediately bursts into performative tears, claiming that Jinfei was the one who initiated the physical aggression. His mother glares at Jinfei with a look of severe administrative disapproval, taking Jinru's fabrication at face value. Jinfei wipes the remaining wine from her face, her expression one of cold disappointment toward the woman's lack of objectivity. Realizing that the environment has become professionally toxic, Jinfei turns her back and prepares to exit the banquet hall. The matriarch calls out to her son, demanding to know why he is following the designer instead of staying behind to handle the situation. He Yuan offers a cold, executive dismissal, stating that he is tired and has no interest in staying for the remaining festivities. His eyes flash with a sharp intensity, signaling that he has already seen through the technical flaws in Jinru's story. Jinru's confident facade begins to crumble as she realizes the CEO isn't buying into her administrative manipulation. A warm jacket is suddenly draped over Jinfei's shoulders, providing a protective barrier against the cold evening air. He Yuan looks down at her with a steady, authoritative gaze and commands her to follow him home. Back at her residence, Jinru shatters a glass against the floor in a fit of pure, unbridled administrative rage. A man approaches her from the shadows, his tone dripping with a suspicious, technical curiosity about her current distress. Jinru crosses her arms and seethes, blaming Jinfei for sabotaging her personal and professional standing within the industry. The man offers a dark, calculating smirk, promising that he will personally handle the technical removal of Jinfei from their lives. After a grueling day at work, Jinfei walks through the quiet streets, planning to cook a simple dinner for herself. A familiar voice cuts through the night air, calling out her name with an unexpected intensity. She spins around, her eyes widening as she finds herself face-to-face with her past. Gu Shengyang stands before her, extending a sudden invitation to share a meal together. Jinfei doesn't hesitate for a second, delivering a sharp and final refusal to his face. A comical battle of wills ensues as Gu pleads for her time, while she maintains an ironclad stance of rejection. Seeing her about to walk away, Gu reaches out and firmly catches her arm to halt her departure. He makes a desperate technical proposal, promising to never bother her again if she agrees to this one final meeting. Jinfei pauses, weighing the administrative benefit of permanent peace against the discomfort of the dinner. They eventually arrive at a sophisticated, upscale restaurant bathed in a soft, ambient glow. Gu settles into his seat, noting with a hint of nostalgia that it has been far too long since they shared such a moment. As he carefully cuts into his steak, he expresses his sincere gratitude that she decided to accompany him. Jinfei remains focused on her own meal, maintaining a strictly professional and silent demeanor throughout the course. Gu attempts to break the tension by mentioning the background music, recalling that it's the same piece they heard during their very first visit. A waiter meticulously pours a glass of red wine, adding to the high-end atmosphere of the technical encounter. Having finished her meal, Jinfei dabs her mouth with a napkin and reminds him that his administrative promise of non-interference must now be honored. Gu's expression shifts into a mask of heavy realization as he prepares to reveal his true intentions. He slides a velvet box across the table, revealing a stunning necklace he once intended to give her as a gift. Jinfei stares at the shimmering jewelry, her mind racing with memories of the technical design she once admired. Gu reaches across the table to gently take her hand, seeking a moment of personal reconciliation. He leans in close, his voice dropping to a whisper as he begs for a chance to start their relationship over from scratch. Jinfei clutches her hand to her chest, her heart heavy as she processes his admission of past mistakes. She delivers a crushing blow to his hopes, stating that she has already moved on to He Yuan and expects him to disappear from her life forever. Exiting the restaurant, Jinfei walks past a parked security vehicle, her focus entirely on the path ahead. She shakes off the lingering traces of the encounter, firmly reminding herself that her loyalty now lies solely with He Yuan. Arriving back at Penthouse, she announces her return to the quiet living room. He Yuan looks up from the sofa with a chilling, executive gaze, demanding to know if her date with her ex-boyfriend was a success. He Yuan's voice drops to a chilling tone as he asks if Jinfei enjoyed her time with her ex-boyfriend. He maintains a rigid, executive posture, reminding her that her professional loyalty belongs solely to him. Jinfei looks up at him with a mix of confusion and mounting dread as the administrative pressure in the room rises. Her breath hitches while she searches his face for any sign of his usual calculated composure. He Yuan leans in with an intense, unwavering focus to ensure his message about professional boundaries is heard loud and clear. Stunned by his sudden display of authority, Jinfei can only stare back in silent disbelief. Without another word, he decisively carries her toward the bathroom to address the technical mess from her evening out. He Yuan's gaze remains cold and distant, his mind fixed on the perceived betrayal of their working arrangement. Jinfei steadies herself on the tiled floor, completely overwhelmed by the rapid turn of events. He reaches out and firmly turns the technical shower handle to initiate the cleaning process. Later, wrapped in a professional robe, Jinfei pleads with He Yuan to listen to her side of the story. She reaches out to embrace him from behind, desperate to bridge the administrative gap that has formed between them. He Yuan's expression remains a mask of cold indifference, refusing to acknowledge her attempt at reconciliation. He turns to face her, his eyes burning with a mix of executive frustration and deep-seated suspicion. The sudden mechanical chime of a phone on the bedside table shatters the heavy silence of the room. He Yuan clicks his tongue in annoyance, his patience for further distractions reaching its technical limit. He looks down at the device, his jaw tightening as he prepares to confront the source of the interruption. The screen illuminates with an incoming call from Gu Shengyang, the very man who caused the day's administrative friction. Sensing the shift in the atmosphere, Jinfei asks with a look of genuine concern what is happening. He Yuan retrieves the phone, his face darkening as he considers the technical implications of the persistent caller. He makes a sharp, decisive gesture to silence the device, his anger finally boiling over. With a dismissive huff, the CEO turns his back on her, signaling that the administrative meeting is officially over. Overcome with exhaustion and frustration, Jinfei collapses onto the bed as her world continues to spiral. He Yuan grips the ornate door handle, his mind set on exiting the room to regain his professional composure. He leaves Jinfei sitting alone in the shadows, the technical rift between them wider than ever before. Jinfei walks alone down a dimly lit street, her guard up as the shadows lengthen around her. She glances over her shoulder with a sharp sense of vigilance, certain that an unknown presence is trailing her every move. Her hand darts into her pocket, searching for her device to initiate an emergency administrative contact. She quickly dials He Yuan, hoping the CEO can provide immediate technical assistance or security support. She whispers her location into the receiver, unaware that a hand is reaching out from the darkness to intercept her. Her eyes widen in a moment of pure administrative shock as the intruder makes their move. The phone clatters to the pavement, with He Yuan's voice still calling out for a status update from the other end. Two men stand over her unconscious form, discussing the technical efficiency of their sudden ambush. A van roars to life and speeds away, leaving the discarded phone as the only evidence of the administrative abduction. Half an hour later, a friend rushes onto the scene, her footsteps echoing against the cold concrete. She spots the glowing screen of the abandoned phone lying in the middle of the empty road. Upon closer inspection, she realizes with horror that the device belongs to Jinfei and was mid-call when it was dropped. Panic sets in as she searches the surrounding area, unable to find any sign of where the designer was taken. Inside a secluded warehouse, Jinfei slowly regains consciousness, her head throbbing from the technical force used during her capture. A single light fixture sways rhythmically above her, casting erratic shadows across the industrial room. A tattered curtain flutters in the breeze of a nearby window, emphasizing the isolation of her new location. Two shadowy figures loom over her, their expressions filled with a cold, professional detachment. She blinks back the haze, demanding to know the identity of those responsible for this logistical nightmare. One of the captors reveals that their objective is specifically linked to her professional connection with He Yuan. His partner watches the interaction closely, maintaining a strict focus on the security of the perimeter. The two men briefly bicker about the administrative details of how they secured their high-profile target. Jinfei remains composed despite the dire circumstances, attempting to negotiate a peaceful exit from the facility. She offers a technical counter-proposal, promising to double their current fee if they agree to release her immediately. The captors pause to consider the financial implications of her administrative offer. They huddle together to discuss the potential profit, weighing the risk against the sudden increase in their technical budget. However, the fear of their mysterious employer's wrath quickly overshadows any thoughts of a side deal. The lead captor ultimately rejects the bribe, stating that they must adhere to the strict rules of their contract. He reaches out with a firm grip to secure her arm, signaling that the interrogation process is about to begin. He Yuan sits alone in his office, his executive focus clouded by the lingering tension of his earlier argument with Jinfei. He recalls her desperate pleas for him to listen, his own administrative frustration having led him to shut her out. Suddenly, his phone vibrates on the desk with an incoming call from the very designer he just dismissed. He scoffs at the device, initially viewing the persistent contact as another attempt at a technical explanation he isn't ready to hear. Despite his annoyance, he answers the call, his voice cold as he prepares to maintain his professional distance. His eyes widen in immediate alarm as the frantic voice on the other end delivers the terrifying news that Jinfei has been abducted. Back in the warehouse, Jinfei narrows her eyes, her mind working rapidly to find a technical solution to her predicament. She spots a coil of heavy rope resting on a nearby crate, a stark reminder of her restricted mobility. Her gaze shifts to a sharp utility knife left carelessly on the table, offering a dangerous but necessary tool for her survival. One of the mercenaries scoffs at her, his expression twisting into a mocking grin as he dismisses her chances of escaping their supervision. The two men exchange a look of professional amusement, clearly underestimating the designer's resolve. The lead captor smirks, confident that their administrative control over the situation is absolute. The captors are suddenly jolted by a shift in Jinfei's behavior, their previous confidence replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. One man offers a chilling, low-level smile, convinced that they can simply wait for technical defenses to crumble. He maintains a look of arrogant composure, certain that the designer lacks the stamina to hold out much longer. Jinfei stares back with an unyielding intensity, her vision blurring as she fights to stay conscious and focused. Realizing that the situation is spiraling out of their control, the captor shouts for his partner to secure the target immediately. A powerful executive kick shatters the silence, sending the warehouse door flying off its hinges with a thunderous impact. The mercenaries spin around in total administrative shock, their eyes wide as they demand to know who has breached their perimeter. A firm hand reaches through the debris, signaling a direct and forceful intervention in the kidnapping. He Yuan surges into the room with calculated precision, physically neutralizing the captors to ensure the security of the area. He scans the industrial space with frantic intensity, until his eyes finally land on the designer, her name escaping his lips in a rare display of emotion. Jinfei looks up through a veil of tears, the sound of his voice acting as a technical anchor for her fading consciousness. He Yuan pulls her into a protective embrace, whispering a sincere administrative apology for his failure to arrive sooner. He Yuan keeps a silent executive vigil by the hospital bed, his hand firmly grounding the unconscious Jinfei. His gaze is heavy with a technical mix of regret and simmering fury over the security breach that led to this. Sensing her distress, he leans in to provide a steady administrative presence as she begins to stir from her forced sleep. He tightens his grip on her hand, a silent promise that her personal safety is now his top priority. Jinfei's eyes flutter open, a soft, weary sound escaping her lips as she slowly returns to consciousness. Seeing her wake, He Yuan immediately prepares to summon the medical staff for a full technical evaluation. Jinfei reaches out with a sudden, weak strength to halt his departure and keep him by her side. She looks up at him with a fragile expression, insisting that she wasn't subjected to any further administrative bullying during her ordeal. Hee-yuan absorbs her words in silence, his expression hardening as he processes the trauma she has just endured. He gently sandwiches her hand between his own, offering a rare display of technical empathy to calm her nerves. With an authoritative tone, he declares that regardless of the day's chaos, her position as his partner remains absolute. Tears spill down Jinfei's cheeks as the weight of his administrative validation finally breaks her emotional composure. Hee-yuan maintains his professional exterior, instructing her to rest while he handles the remaining medical logistics. Out in the corridor, he intercepts the attending physician to demand a comprehensive status report on her recovery. The doctor clarifies that while the physical impact was minimal, the primary concern is the technical shock to her system. The sound of aggressive, heavy footsteps echoes through the sterile hallway, signaling an unwelcome and sudden arrival. A fist suddenly cuts through the air with a violent, uncoordinated trajectory aimed directly at the CEO. Gu Shengyang delivers a desperate strike to Hee-yuan's jaw, his professional composure completely shattered by the news. The force of the blow sends Hee-yuan stumbling back against the hospital wall, catching him entirely off guard. Gu seethes with administrative rage, accusing the CEO of failing his most basic duty of protection toward Jinfei. He grabs Hee-yuan by the collar, snarling that his failure makes him technically unqualified to stand by her side anymore. Hee-yuan stares back with a cold, bruised intensity, questioning Gu's own right to intervene in their professional affairs. With a sharp, technical movement, the CEO grips Gu's wrist to break the physical confrontation in the hallway. He stands his ground, reminding the ex-boyfriend that he is the one who maintained a constant vigil through the night. Gu's expression falters, the technical weight of his own helplessness beginning to sink in as he faces the CEO. He slowly releases his grip on Hee-yuan's shirt, the fire in his eyes replaced by a dull administrative ache. Hee-yuan adjusts his disheveled collar with a cold, executive dismissal, ordering the intruder to clear the area immediately. Gu admits with a heavy heart that he would have been the one protecting her if she hadn't rejected his technical proposal. He requests a final administrative moment to check on her well-being before he disappears from her life for good. Hee-yuan listens with a stony silence, his focus remaining entirely on the technical boundaries of their current situation. Gu places a hand on the CEO's shoulder, a somber acknowledgement of the bridge he can no longer cross. He looks down, finally admitting the crushing technical truth that Jinfei has chosen Hee-yuan over him. Gu looks down with a heavy heart, admitting that he once desperately wanted to rebuild the technical bond they shared. He finally releases his grip on the CEO's shirt, acknowledging the painful administrative truth that Jinfei has chosen his rival. Stealing his resolve, Gu pushes the hospital door open to face the woman he still loves. Jinfei looks up from her bed with a sharp, professional chill, demanding to know why he's intruding on her recovery. Gu slowly approaches the bedside, his executive composure completely stripped away by the sight of her in such a fragile state. He reaches out to clasp her hand, his voice trembling as he confesses how much her safety has been weighing on his mind. Jinfei immediately yanks her hand away, maintaining a strict technical boundary to avoid any further misunderstanding. She turns her gaze aside, firmly stating that Hee-yuan is by her side and his presence is no longer required. The weight of her rejection hits Gu like a physical blow, leaving him searching for answers in the cold hospital air. He clutches his chest in a desperate administrative plea, arguing that he can offer her the security and protection that Hee-yuan clearly failed to provide. Jinfei's voice cuts through his words with a sharp, final command to stop the conversation immediately. She looks him in the eye with unwavering resolve, declaring that her professional and personal loyalty now belongs solely to the CEO. Gu stands frozen in shock, the finality of her words shattering the last of his technical hopes. She looks down at the sheets, softly explaining that the path they once shared has been permanently closed by their past mistakes. With a weary expression, she begs him to finally release her from the administrative burden of their history. Gu stares at her in silence, the crushing realization of his permanent displacement settling over him like a shroud. He stands at the foot of the bed for one last moment, the distance between them now an unbridgeable technical gap. He clenches his hand into a tight fist, struggling to process the absolute failure of his final reconciliation attempt. Outside in the corridor, Hee-yuan maintains a vigilant executive stance as he watches a suspicious shadow move past the door. He turns his head with a sharp, calculated focus, sensing a breach in the hospital's social perimeter. A woman in pristine white heels clicks past him, her pace suggesting a deliberate administrative mission. Hee-yuan narrows his eyes, instantly recognizing the familiar silhouette of Zhao Jinru in the sterile hallway. He tracks her movement with a look of mounting suspicion, questioning the logistical coincidence of her presence. He wonders why his fiancée would be navigating the hospital wings at such a critical technical juncture. The sudden vibration of a device in his pocket pulls his attention away from the departing figure. He answers the call only to receive a dire report that the two mercenaries responsible for the abduction have mysteriously vanished. The news of the security failure leaves him visibly shaken, his mind racing through the potential administrative fallout. His expression darkens with an intense, executive fury as he realizes the mastermind behind the plot is still at large. The weight of the day's technical complications causes the device to slip from his hand, tumbling toward the floor in slow motion. He stands alone in the hallway, wondering if his recent administrative fatigue is beginning to compromise his judgment. The morning sun illuminates the grand He family estate, reflecting the high-stakes administrative power held within its walls. Inside the private library, He Yuan maintains a sharp executive focus as he prepares to transition between his various professional responsibilities. His loyal assistant notes the visible signs of technical fatigue, suggesting that the CEO finally take a much-needed administrative break. He Yuan dismisses the concern with a cold, professional edge, focused solely on the critical objectives remaining on his schedule. As he opens the door, Jinfei catches him completely off guard, greeting him with an enthusiastic display of personal relief. The CEO blinks in administrative surprise, demanding to know why she has prematurely vacated her technical recovery suite. She looks up at him with a soft, sincere expression, admitting that the lack of his presence was the most difficult part of her hospital stay. He Yuan reaches out with a gentle, professional touch to confirm the stability of her current physical condition. Despite the warm greeting, he remains firm on security protocols, insisting that she be immediately escorted back for further medical observation. Jinfei resists the directive, her expression turning serious, as she prepares to offer a technical justification for her early discharge. He Yuan pauses, his skeptical gaze inviting her to provide a convincing administrative explanation for her sudden arrival. She stands her ground with a determined posture, ready to defend her decision to prioritize her professional and personal surroundings. She gestures toward the stuffy atmosphere of the medical facility, explaining that the lack of fresh air was detrimental to her technical recovery process. Reaching up to his face, she adds that her primary motivation was to ensure he didn't succumb to the technical strain of managing both the company and her care. A rare flicker of professional embarrassment crosses the CEO's face as he turns away to hide his reaction to her genuine concern. He decides to maintain his executive schedule, leaving the room while Jinfei promises to maintain the household's administrative stability until his return. Down the hall, a suspicious figure navigates the corporate corridor, her movements suggesting a highly classified and dangerous agenda. Zhao Jinru speaks into her device in a hushed tone, her face taut with the fear of a potential administrative breach. She listens intently as her contact confirms that the two mercenaries have been neutralized, effectively erasing any technical link to her plot. Her eyes burn with a cold, calculated malice as she vows to escalate her professional campaign against Jinfei. The heavy doors of the president's office stand as a silent barrier between the CEO's internal investigations and the outside world. He Yuan sits at the center of his command center, his mind dissecting the logistical anomalies of the recent security failure. Assistant Qi presents a classified dossier detailing the recent financial and social movements of the Zhao family. As He Yuan scans the technical data, his eyes narrow at the undeniable evidence of a high-level betrayal within his inner circle. He slams his hand down onto the desk, the force of his executive anger crumpling the reports beneath his palm. His face is a mask of pure, unadulterated fury as he realizes the full scope of the administrative treachery orchestrated by those closest to him. Assistant Kai enters the office with a heavy dossier, announcing that the administrative review of the Zhao family contracts is finally complete. He stops dead in his tracks as he spots a ceramic cup overturned on the desk, its contents soaking into the technical documents below. The dark liquid spreads across the mahogany surface, a silent indicator of a sudden medical emergency. Key's face pales with immediate concern as he cries out for the CEO, his executive composure shattered by the scene. He finds He Yuan collapsed on the carpet, his body motionless after the overwhelming technical strain finally took its toll. An emergency vehicle screams through the city streets, its sirens signaling a high-priority transport to the nearest medical facility. The heavy doors of the critical care unit swing shut, sealing the CEO away for an intensive administrative health evaluation. A pale hand tightens its grip on the sterile hospital linens, a sign of returning consciousness amidst the technical haze of recovery. He Yuan sits upright in his bed, the striped hospital gown a stark contrast to his usual sharp executive attire. He rests a hand against his face, his expression clouded with frustration over the logistical timing of his physical collapse. Several days later, Jinfei arrives at the study door, her hand resting tentatively on the frame as she checks on the CEO's progress. She watches from the shadows as He Yuan remains buried under a mountain of administrative paperwork, refusing to slow his professional pace. A wave of concern washes over her as she realizes the heavy technical toll his workload is taking on his health. A sudden idea strikes her, and she decides to prepare a nutritious soup to help stabilize his physical condition. The yellow pot simmers on the stove, filled with ingredients carefully selected for their technical health benefits. Jinfei takes a small sample to ensure the flavor profile meets her high administrative standards for the CEO. Her technical focus interrupted by the persistent ringing of her smartphone on the kitchen counter. She reaches out to check the caller ID, curious about who would be contacting her during her private culinary session. She greets her friend Hong, keeping her tone professional, while she continues to monitor the boiling broth. On the other end, Hong is in a state of total administrative panic, begging for help with a sensitive task at the office. Fearing for her friend's professional security, Jinfei reluctantly agrees to head back to the building to retrieve a forgotten file. The Shengguang building looms against the night sky, its dark windows reflecting the high-stakes corporate environment within. Jinfei navigates the silent, dimly lit office floor, her movements focused on locating the specific technical dossier. Her eyes light up as she finally secures the brown envelope. Relieved to have completed the logistical favor for her colleague, she clutches the documents tightly to her side, prepared to exit the facility and return to her administrative duties at home. She glances at her phone with a look of confusion, noting that Hong has gone completely silent and hasn't replied to her status update. Shrugging off the technical delay, she decides to deliver the paperwork in person during the next business cycle. Unbeknownst to her, a security camera tracks her every move, broadcasting her presence to a hidden observer. In the shadows, a woman's lips curl into a cold, predatory smile as she realizes her plan to frame Jinfei is finally in motion. The sprawling He family estate basks in the morning light, a symbol of administrative power that currently feels heavy with tension. Jinfei stifles a weary yawn, her mind fixated on He Yuan's technical decision to return to the office so early despite his recent collapse. Her hands tremble as she attempts a routine task, the liquid pouring with an uncoordinated and shaky rhythm. The ceramic cup slips from her grip and shatters against the floor, a sudden administrative omen of the chaos to come. She immediately drops to her knees, frantically trying to manage the logistical mess before it stains the expensive flooring. As she reaches for the sharp fragments, her technical focus wavers for just a fraction of a second. A sharp sting alerts her to a fresh cut on her finger, leaving her to lament the series of administrative misfortunes haunting her day. The sudden vibration of a device on the counter signals an incoming call from an unidentified and suspicious number. She stares at the screen with a mounting sense of professional dread, questioning the timing of this unexpected contact. Her heart sinks as a cold voice from the Municipal Public Security Bureau demands her immediate presence for a high-level technical investigation. Thrust into the sterile environment of the police station, Jinfei reels from the sudden administrative escalation of the situation. She stands her ground before the authorities, firmly stating that she never authorized the removal of any confidential corporate data. Her accuser reaches into a bag with a calculated flourish, preparing to reveal the technical centerpiece of her frame-up. The brown envelope hits the table with a heavy thud, providing a visual anchor for the administrative trap laid against her. Zhao Jinru watches with a predatory gaze, inviting Jinfei to examine the evidence that seemingly confirms her professional betrayal. Terror washes over Jinfei as she recognizes the exact file that Hong logistically manipulated her into retrieving. The antagonist maintains a cold, smug composure, relishing the technical success of her elaborate scheme. Jinfei desperately points to her device, insisting that her call logs will provide the necessary administrative proof of Hong's involvement. The officer remains unmoved, instead preparing to play a recorded confession that will finalize the technical case. With a sharp click, the recording device begins to play back a narrative designed to destroy Jinfei's professional reputation. She stands frozen in disbelief as she hears her friend Hong deliver a fabricated and malicious testimony against her. Jinru crosses her arms in a display of ultimate administrative victory, her plan to displace her rival working perfectly. Based on the weight of the technical evidence, the officer officially declares that a warrant has been issued for her immediate arrest. The cold steel of the handcuff snaps around her wrists, marking the start of a dark new chapter in her professional journey. Jinfei is forcibly led away, her desperate pleas for administrative justice falling on deaf ears within the station walls. The rhythmic sound of heavy footsteps echoes through the corridor as she is escorted toward her temporary holding cell. Stripped of her status and freedom, she huddles in the corner of the cell, the weight of the administrative betrayal crushing her spirit. A guard's voice cuts through her despair, announcing that an executive visitor has arrived to see her. She is led back through the sterile hallway, her pace hesitant as she prepares for a difficult technical confrontation. On the other side of the reinforced glass, He Yuan stands with a look of intense and protective administrative focus. Seeing him, Jinfei surges forward, her voice cracking as she calls out to the only person who can salvage her professional future. She begs him to believe in her innocence, finding immediate technical relief when he confirms his unwavering trust in her. He presses his hand against the glass, a silent executive promise that he will dismantle the conspiracy against her at any cost. He Yuan turns to leave with a look of cold, calculated fury, ready to launch a full-scale administrative counterattack against those who framed her. He Yuan sits at his executive command center, ready to review the final pieces of the counteroffensive. Assistant Qi presents a thick dossier containing the technical evidence of the Zhao family's administrative sabotage. The CEO scans the reports with a cold, calculated focus before ordering an immediate logistical deployment to the Zhao headquarters. The Zhao Group headquarters stands as a monolith of corporate power, unaware of the impending administrative storm. He Yuan strides into the rival's office, his presence immediately shifting the room's professional equilibrium. Zhao Jingxun greets him with a smug, technical arrogance, questioning the purpose of this unscheduled executive visit. Maintaining a sharp, professional edge, He Yuan calmly states that he has a critical update to share regarding their recent activities. With a sharp gesture, he signals for his assistant to bring forward the evidence that will dismantle their scheme. The brown envelope is placed on the table with a heavy, administrative finality. Jingxuan begins to sift through the documents, his confident facade slowly beginning to crack. A look of pure, technical panic flashes across his face as he realizes the depth of He Yuan's investigation. He stares at the incriminating data in stunned silence, his logistical defenses completely shattered. He Yuan watches the collapse of his rival with a look of intense, executive satisfaction. Jingxuan looks up with a desperate expression, searching for any technical loophole in the evidence against him. The CEO lets out a cold, sharp smile, knowing he has successfully secured the upper hand in this professional conflict. Realizing his defeat, Jingxuan clenches the papers in a fit of administrative rage and frustration. Back at the detention center, a guard informs Jinfei that a new visitor has arrived for a technical consultation. She finds herself face to face with Zhao Jinru, whose presence only heightens the professional tension in the room. Jinfei lifts the receiver with a look of unwavering resolve, demanding to know the purpose of this malicious visit. Jinru offers a deceptive administrative deal, promising to mitigate the legal fallout if Jinfei accepts full responsibility. Jinfei stares back with a look of pure, technical defiance, refusing to be intimidated by the fabricated charges. The antagonist maintains a cold, smug composure until the sudden vibration of her device interrupts her victory lap. She answers the call with a look of administrative confusion, listening as her brother delivers a frantic update. Her face contorts in a mask of pure, technical shock as she learns that He Yuan has completely neutralized their leverage. The heavy security doors burst open with a loud, administrative bang, signaling a shift in the facility's protocols. He Yuan enters the visitation room with a commanding executive presence, his eyes fixed on Jinfei. He moves past the guards with a sense of urgent, professional purpose to reach her side. Jinru watches in stunned disbelief while Jinfei looks up with a flicker of renewed technical hope. The officer steps forward to deliver the official administrative decree that all charges against Jinfei have been dropped. Tears of relief stream down her face as the weight of the false accusations is finally lifted from her shoulders. He Yuan offers a rare, sincere smile, confirming that their technical ordeal has finally come to an end. He reaches out to provide a steadying professional presence as they prepare to exit the detention center together. They walk away from the administrative trap, leaving a defeated Zhao Jinru to face the fallout of her failed conspiracy. The sterile atmosphere of the detention center is finally broken, as He Yuan pulls Jinfei into a protective embrace, signaling the end of her administrative nightmare. Safe within his presence, Jinfei leans her head against his chest, finding a moment of absolute peace after the chaotic events of her arrest. The sleek executive sedan cuts through the dark city streets, carrying them away from the shadows of the police station. He Yuan turns toward her with a look of deep concern, insisting that she prioritize her technical recovery by heading straight home for some much-needed rest. Jinfei immediately protests with a determined expression, claiming she's ready to resume her professional duties without a single moment of delay. He Yuan offers a gentle, reassuring gesture to calm her spirit, though his eyes remain focused on the complex administrative challenges still ahead. The sudden glow of a smartphone illuminates the dark interior of the car, signaling an urgent incoming transmission from a professional contact. He Yuan answers the call with a practiced executive cool, his face hardening as he prepares to receive a critical technical update. The voice on the other end delivers a grim assessment of their current timeline, warning that their window for a successful countermove is rapidly closing. He Yuan acknowledges the update with a sharp, professional brevity, his mind already calculating the next phase of his corporate strategy. Jinfei watches him closely, her heart sinking as she notices the visible toll this administrative warfare is taking on his well-being. Hoping to lighten the technical mood, she promises to prepare a massive celebratory meal to help him recharge his physical energy. Back in the safety of the kitchen, Jinfei carefully samples the broth, ensuring the flavor meets the high standards required for the CEO's palate. She beams with a sense of personal pride, determined to prove that her administrative excellence extends to every facet of her life. As the minutes tick by, she glances at the clock on the wall, her anticipation growing as she waits for his return. With the night growing late, she decides to initiate a technical follow-up to confirm his current logistical status. He Yuan's voice comes through the receiver with a tone of professional regret, explaining that an urgent office matter will keep him away for the entire evening. Jinfei looks down at the elaborate spread of gourmet dishes, now a silent testament to her wasted culinary efforts. She hangs up the phone with a heavy sigh, the empty house reflecting the growing administrative distance between them. Days pass in a blur of lonely meals, with the technical quality of the food doing little to mask her increasing isolation. Slumped over the table in a fit of administrative despair, Jinfei laments the fact that she hasn't seen the CEO in nearly a week. Suddenly, she snaps back to attention with a spark of renewed energy, deciding to take the initiative and deliver a meal directly to the office. She stands before the towering glass facade of the Shangguang building, ready to breach the corporate barrier and find her partner. Inside the lobby, the office staff whispers in hushed tones, dissecting the technical details of Jinfei's recent legal exoneration. Jinfei reaches the heavy doors of the president's office, only to be stopped by a staffer who claims the CEO is currently unavailable for any meetings. Her expression turns to one of deep concern as she questions the staffer about He Yuan's prolonged absence from the family estate. The assistant maintains a professional facade, delivering a message that the CEO has requested her presence for a formal dinner at a local restaurant tonight. Jinfei's eyes light up with pure technical joy as she confirms the logistics for their long-awaited reunion. She skips away with a light heart, completely revitalized by the prospect of spending time with him outside of the office. The staffer watches her go with a look of mounting dread, clearly hiding a darker technical truth about the CEO's recent behavior. The upscale, break restaurant glows under the evening sky, setting a sophisticated backdrop for what should be a peaceful reunion. Jinfei stands outside the entrance, smoothing her dress as she prepares to reconnect with the man she has missed so dearly. Her heart skips a beat when she steps inside, only to find He Yuan already seated with an unfamiliar, elegantly dressed woman. Stepping toward the table, Jinfei offers a polite apology for her late arrival, while taking note of the sophisticated atmosphere. She turns her attention to the stranger, her gaze searching for an explanation regarding the woman's presence at their private dinner. He Yuan maintains a calm professional demeanor as he introduces Ye Xinai, a former academic colleague who has recently returned to the country. Ye Xinai offers a polished greeting, thanking Jinfei for the administrative support she has provided to He Yuan during her absence. Trying to maintain her composure, Jinfei playfully asserts her personal connection to the CEO, determined to hold her ground. Despite her outward confidence, a wave of professional insecurity washes over her as she compares herself to the other woman's effortless grace. The technical tension in the room spikes when Ye Xinai asks He Yuan if he has disclosed the true nature of their current arrangement. Jinfei's eyes widen in administrative shock, her mind racing to process the implication of a hidden secret. He Yuan takes a slow, measured sip of wine, his expression unreadable as he prepares to address the mounting confusion. He sets the glass back on the table with a firm click, signaling the start of a difficult technical explanation. He recalls their shared history at the University of St. Cumbria, where Ye Xinai was recognized as a top-tier financial strategist. Her academic record was impeccable, with several high-level publications already establishing her technical reputation at a young age. He Yuan reveals that he often sought her professional advice during their university days, forging a deep intellectual bond. Their paths diverged after graduation, with Ye Xinai pursuing global opportunities while He Yuan returned to manage the family's administrative legacy. A cold dread settles in Jinfei's chest as she asks if this woman is simply a figure from his professional past. He Yuan's gaze remains fixed on the table as he clarifies that their relationship is far more significant than a mere past romance. Jinfei waits in breathless silence, the administrative weight of his next words threatening to shatter her composure. With a sharp, clinical focus, he prepares to deliver a revelation that will change the course of their partnership forever. The room goes cold as he officially introduces Ye Xinai as his current fiancé, leaving Jinfei in a state of total disbelief. He admits that his initial interest in Jinfei was based solely on a technical resemblance to the woman he has always loved. Jinfei stares blankly at the table, her heart breaking as she realizes she was merely a substitute in his elaborate administrative life. Ye Xinai acknowledges the visual similarities between them, her tone remaining strictly professional despite the emotional carnage. He Yuan looks her in the eye with a cold executive finality, stating that he can no longer maintain their current arrangement. Tears stream down Jinfei's face as the CEO officially terminates their relationship, leaving her alone in the wreckage of her hopes. The once elegant dinner table now sits in a state of cold disarray, with a single fallen petal signaling the death of their relationship. Jinfei's knuckles turn white as she grips the table, her voice trembling as she demands to know the meaning behind his cruel revelation. He Yuan remains chillingly composed, offering her a blank check of compensation to settle the technical debt of their time together. He reinforces the new administrative reality by pulling Ye Xinai close, signaling that Jinfei has been officially replaced. The sound of her hand striking the table rings out like a gunshot, punctuating her desperate refusal to accept his terms. Tears flow freely as Jinfei screams her defiance, unable to reconcile their shared history with this sudden executive termination. Ye Xinai maintains a calm, professional distance, signaling that the meeting is over and it's time for them to depart. Without a single word of comfort, He Yuan turns his back on her, walking away toward a future that no longer includes her. In a final, desperate attempt to stop the inevitable, she reaches out to grab his arm with a trembling hand. The silence is shattered by a stinging slap as Jinfei vents her administrative agony across He Yuan's cheek. Outside, the heavens open up in a torrential downpour, the city skyline blurring under the weight of the storm. Drenched and hollow, Jinfei wanders through the rain-slicked streets, her professional world completely dismantled. She looks back one last time, her wet hair clinging to her face as she asks if this cold abandonment is truly the end. Hee-yuan doesn't even flinch, focused solely on escorting his actual fiancé through the technical chaos of the evening. The mark on his face remains a physical testament to her pain, while her eyes reflect the total devastation of his betrayal. Her heels splash into the freezing puddles, each step taking her further away from the life she thought she had secured. Collapsing against a cold brick wall, Jinfei finally breaks, the rain masking the tears of a woman who has lost everything. The towering headquarters of Gu's group looms over the city, a bastion of corporate stability amidst the unfolding personal chaos. Inside the executive suite, Gu Shengyang leans over his desk with a heavy sigh, his focus interrupted by the insistent vibration of a high-priority call. He stares at the screen in disbelief as Hee-yuan's name flashes across the display, signaling a technical breach of their unspoken truce. Gu Shengyang answers with a sharp, professional intensity, delivering the explosive technical update that Jinfei is currently expecting a child. On the other end, Hee-yuan's voice is cold and detached as he formally transfers the responsibility for Jinfei's well-being back to his rival. Overcome with administrative fury, Gu slams his fist onto the mahogany surface, vowing to settle Hee-yuan's financial debts one for all. Hee-yuan stares at the darkened device in a moment of silent technical reflection, the weight of his decisions finally beginning to settle. 3 months later, a lavish spread of gourmet delicacies is laid out, marking a significant shift in Jinfei's nutritional and professional status. Jinfei focuses entirely on the meal with a healthy appetite, unaware of the deep, protective gaze Gu Shengyang is directing her way. As she reaches for a sophisticated beverage, a firm hand moves to intercept her, maintaining a strict focus on her maternal health protocols. Gu Shengyang gently explains that a white lady cocktail is strictly off-limits, insisting she prioritize a nutrient-rich dessert instead. Jinfei accepts the technical substitution with a playful smile, determined to maintain her strength for the sake of the baby's development. She enjoys the sweet treat with a look of genuine contentment, while Gu watches her with a renewed sense of executive purpose. The rhythmic clink of a spoon against glass reveals a hidden technical surprise, a brilliant diamond ring nestled within the bowl. The atmosphere in the high-rise restaurant shifts into a higher professional gear as Gu Shengyang softly calls out her name to capture her full attention. He pushes back his chair and stands with a look of unwavering administrative resolve. Moving with practiced grace, the executive drops to one knee, prepared to launch the most important proposal of his life. He takes her hand with a gentle, technical precision, asking for the formal opportunity to provide her with a lifetime of security. Jinfei looks at him with a mixture of technical shock and deep emotional conflict, her mind racing through their complex history. She turns her gaze away with a look of profound administrative regret, stating that such an arrangement would be fundamentally unfair to him. Gu Shengyang counters with a steady, professional smile, insisting that his commitment to her and the child transcends any technical notion of fairness. Despite his earnest plea, Jinfei begins to withdraw her hand, unable to bridge the technical gap between her past and this new future. Tears of technical frustration stream down her face as she explains that she cannot offer him a dishonest administrative partnership. The two remain locked in a silent standoff within the vast, empty restaurant, the weight of their unresolved history hanging heavy in the air. Jinfei's expression softens into a look of quiet contemplation as she weighs the logistical reality of her situation. Gu Shengyang presses his advantage, urging her to consider the long-term administrative benefits of providing the child with a stable paternal figure. A sudden, sharp technical realization flashes in Jinfei's eyes as his words trigger a painful memory from her own upbringing. She recalls the technical isolation of her youth, where she was cruelly labeled a wild child, due to the absence of a formal father figure. Looking back at the man before her, she realizes that Gu Shengyang is offering a logistical shield to protect her child from a similar fate. Gu maintains a look of intense, protective focus, waiting for her to accept his offer of a secure and unified professional future. The bustling atmosphere of the airport terminal hums with kinetic energy of travelers embarking on new logistical journeys. Jinfei's polished shoes click rhythmically against the terminal floor as she prepares to depart for a fresh technical start. Gu Shengyang stands by her side at the boarding gate, both of them clutching the travel documents that will carry them far away from their administrative past. Sensing her hesitation, Gu turns toward her with a look of deep concern, questioning the technical state of her current mindset. Jinfei offers a faint, reassuring smile, insisting that she is simply processing the weight of their upcoming relocation. He places a steadying hand on her shoulder, guiding her toward the aircraft as they prepare to leave their technical burdens behind. High above the clouds, Hee-yuan gazes out the window of a private cabin, his expression reflecting a grim internal conflict. The silence of the private suite is shattered as Gu Shengyang bursts through the door, his voice ringing out with a sharp, administrative urgency. Gu freezes at the sight of the CEO confined to a medical bed, the technical reality of Hee-yuan's condition finally coming into focus. Assistant Qi Zhang steps forward to manage the logistical tension, attempting to maintain professional order during the unexpected intrusion. He Yuan dismisses his assistant with a weak but firm command, insisting on a private technical consultation with his rival. The assistant acknowledges the request with a professional nod, exiting the room to allow the two men to settle their administrative accounts. Gu Shengyang demands an immediate explanation, his eyes searching for the truth behind the CEO's sudden physical decline. He Yuan delivers a devastating medical update, revealing that a terminal brain tumor has drastically shortened his professional timeline. A look of realization washes over Gu as he asks if this terminal diagnosis was the true catalyst for He Yuan's recent abandonment of Jinfei. He Yuan looks away with a heavy heart, entrusting Jinfei's future well-being to the only man capable of providing her with a secure life. Back on the ground, Sinai watches He Yuan with a look of profound concern, questioning the necessity of his cold administrative sacrifice. He Yuan stands firm by the perimeter fence, acknowledging that his remaining time must be managed with absolute technical precision. He pivots on his heel, his movements dictated by a sense of urgent, final purpose. Walking toward his waiting vehicle, he resolves to complete his final professional objectives before his timeline inevitably expires. The wheels of a massive airliner touch down on the runway, signaling a new logistical chapter 3 years after Jinfei's departure. A pair of small, polished shoes tap rhythmically against the terminal floor as a young traveler makes his way through the arrival gate. With a bright, energetic smile, the young boy looks up at his companion, his eyes filled with the wonder of a fresh environment. Jinfei looks down with a mother's warmth, adjusting her sunglasses while reminding young Tong to maintain a firm grip on her hand. The two navigate the bustling airport terminal with practiced administrative ease, ready to face the city they once left behind. Outside the terminal, Jinfei extends an arm to hail a taxi from the line of yellow vehicles, waiting to facilitate their transit. Once inside the cab, the driver looks back to confirm the technical coordinates for their first destination in the city. Jinfei adjusts her shades with a look of quiet confidence, prepared to re-enter the professional world on her own terms. They arrive at the prestigious Yejixing Gem and Jewelry Fair, an event officially sponsored by the powerful Shengguan Group. Tong presses closer to the glass display, mesmerized by the technical brilliance of a pearl necklace shimmering under the spotlights. Jinfei leans down to check on her son, asking if the intricate jewelry meets his high standards of design. The boy beams with pride, declaring that all of his mother's creative works are far superior to anything else in the room. She guides him further into the exhibit hall, unaware that a figure from her past is standing just a few feet away. Jinfei mentions that more of her designs are featured ahead, but she suddenly freezes as a familiar silhouette catches her eye. Across the room, He Yuan stands in profile, his cold, executive presence unchanged by the passage of time. Her heart hammers against her ribs as she stares in administrative shock, questioning why the CEO is attending this specific professional gathering. He Yuan remains focused on a display case, his sharp gaze dissecting the technical merits of the jewelry before him. Panic flares in Jinfei's eyes as she quickly averts her gaze, desperate to avoid a direct visual confrontation. Tong looks up at his mother with a confused expression, sensing the sudden technical shift in her behavior. She stands perfectly still with her back turned to the CEO, the emotional weight of their history hanging heavy in the air. He Yuan continues his inspection of the gallery, seemingly oblivious to the fact that his former partner is standing mere meters away. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the crowd calling her name, forcing Jinfei to acknowledge a familiar face from the Shengguang staff. Assistant Qi Zheng approaches with a look of genuine surprise, clearly shocked to see Jinfei back in the country after so long. He offers a polished, professional greeting, noting that their last administrative encounter feels like a lifetime ago. Jinfei forces a polite, technical smile, attempting to maintain her composure while her past and present collide. Qi Zheng points toward the main gallery, offering to lead her to the section where her latest designs are being showcased. She glances over her shoulder one last time, ensuring that the CEO is still occupied with his own logistical observations. Declining the offer, Jinfei explains that she has already completed her review of the exhibition and is ready to depart. She places a protective hand on Tong's shoulder, signaling the need for an immediate and discreet exit from the venue. Qi Zheng watches her with a look of mounting administrative curiosity, sensing that she is hiding a significant technical detail. Jinfei takes Tong's hand and moves quickly toward the exit, determined to keep her son away from the CEO's influence. As they walk away, Qi Zheng's eyes widen in realization as he focuses on the young boy, his mind racing to process the child's striking resemblance to He Yuan. The towering medical center stands as a cold reminder of the fragile line between life and death. Inside the sterile office, the doctor presents a series of grim technical scans that map out a devastating medical reality. The physician delivers a blunt assessment, warning that the aggressive cancer is on the verge of spreading further at any time. Hee-yuan absorbs the news with a chilling, executive silence, his gaze fixed on the weight of his own mortality. The technical images of the brain scans underscore the urgent need for a high-risk surgical intervention. With a look of deep professional concern, the doctor urges him to consider the emotional stakes for the people who love him. The CEO's eyes narrow behind his glasses as he contemplates the heavy cost of his secret administrative burden. Meanwhile, the afternoon sun casts a warm glow over the modern residential complex where Jinfei has built her new life. Young Tong runs through the park with infectious joy, proudly showing off his colorful pinwheel. Jinfei watches her son with a gentle smile, calling out a soft warning for him to stay safe. The boy's playful sprint comes to an abrupt halt as he accidentally collides with a tall figure. The man quickly kneels to check on the toddler, noticing a small red mark from the impact. Jinfei freezes in place as she recognizes the man who has just intercepted her son. Assistant Qi Zheng looks up from the child, his professional composure wavering at the sight of his former associate. The two stand in a tense logistical standoff amidst the tranquil greenery of the neighborhood park. Jinfei's expression hardens into a look of guarded skepticism as she demands to know his intentions. Qi Zheng maintains a strictly professional focus as he prepares to bridge the technical gap that has existed for 3 years. He presents a digital record of his findings, directly questioning the child's parentage and her current marital status. Turning her head away, Jinfei insists that her current life has no technical connection to Hee-yuan. Qi Zheng's gaze softens with a look of profound administrative regret as he mentions the CEO's current state. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he decides it is finally time to bypass his orders and reveal the truth. They move to a nearby bench to discuss the heavy administrative weight of the past few years, while Tong plays. Jinfei listens in stunned silence as he explains that Hee-yuan's betrayal was a calculated sacrifice to protect her from his terminal illness. Her knuckles turn white as she grips her dress, the technical reality of his love shattering her composure. With a trembling voice, she questions why these critical details are only being shared with her now. Qi Zheng looks down with a heavy heart, suggesting that their shared history deserves a more honest resolution. Jinfei's expression remains cold and detached as she challenges the assumption of any lingering affection. She stands up abruptly, her voice sharp with the pain of being manipulated by his selfish, executive decisions. She turns her back on the assistant, refusing to accept a narrative that justifies his cold abandonment. Sensing the shift in the atmosphere, Tong looks up at his mother with a look of quiet confusion. Qi Zheng delivers a final, desperate plea, revealing that the CEO's time is running out before his next round of chemotherapy. Without a word of acknowledgement, Jinfei takes her son's hand and walks away, leaving the assistant alone with the weight of the truth. The Tianhai City Hospital looms in the background, a bastion of clinical precision and heavy secrets. Jinfei stands before the outpatient department, her resolve wavering as she prepares to confront the ghosts of her past. Her mind is a whirlwind of technical hesitation, questioning if a face-to-face visit is truly the right move for her family. Nearby, little Tong is suddenly captivated by a playful puppy trotting past. The boy bolts after the dog, leaving Jinfei scrambling to keep up with his sudden burst of energy. In her haste, her foot slips on the pavement, sending her stumbling forward with a gasp. She braces for impact, only to be caught in the steady, firm grip of a passing stranger. The force of the collision knocks a medical casebook from the man's hands, sending it skittering across the concrete. A familiar voice rings out, freezing Jinfei in her tracks as the man instantly recognizes her tone. She quickly stoops down to retrieve the fallen document, desperate to maintain her professional distance. When she finally looks up, she finds herself staring directly into the eyes of Hee-yuan. The CEO looks back with a sharp, analytical gaze, his features framed by a pair of sophisticated glasses. Jinfei's pulse quickens as she realizes she wasn't prepared for this administrative reunion so soon. She wordlessly extends the casebook, returning his property with a trembling hand. Seeing a yellow cab approaching, she identifies a tactical exit strategy to avoid further conversation. Without a second word, she hails the vehicle and prepares to disappear into the urban traffic. Once safely inside the taxi, she presses a hand to her heart, trying to steady her erratic breathing. She realizes that Qi Zheng's technical report about Hee-yuan's health was terrifyingly accurate. She envisions the medical reality he faces, where a growing tumor threatens to rob him of his very vision. It's clear that the once invincible executive has been fundamentally altered by his professional and personal trials. She closes her eyes, deciding that a more formal introduction for her son should wait for a better day. Suddenly, a bolt of administrative panic strikes her as she realizes something is missing. She stares at the empty seat beside her, the horrifying realization dawning that she left Tong back at the hospital entrance. Back at the terminal, Tong is blissfully unaware of the chaos, laughing as the puppy licks his face. Hee-yuan looks down at the child, his professional instincts kicking in as he notices the boy is unaccompanied. A nearby staffer confirms the logistical oversight, noting that the boy's guardian seems to have departed in a hurry. Tong squats down to continue his interaction with his new furry friend, completely at ease. Hee-yuan kneels to the boy's level, asking for his name with a rare, gentle tone. In a moment of pure innocence, Tong reaches out to pat the CEO's cheeks, a gesture of unexpected technical warmth. The two form a striking silhouette against the hospital backdrop, a man and a child connected by a secret bond. Hee Yuan smiles, repeating his request for the boy's formal identification. With a proud grin, the toddler announces that his name is Hee Tong. Hee Yuan's expression shifts into one of mild administrative surprise at the shared surname. He patiently explains to the child that many people share the He name, attempting to keep the conversation light. A soft chuckle escapes him as he asks about the current coordinates of the boy's parents. Tong scans the area, his little face falling as he realizes his mother is nowhere to be found. Hee Yuan realizes the gravity of the situation, recognizing that the child has been separated from his guardian. He maintains a calm, professional demeanor, offering to escort the boy to the nearest security station for assistance. Trusting the stranger instinctively, Tong reaches out and firmly grasps the CEO's hand. The afternoon sun beats down on the sprawling complex of the Tianhai City Hospital. Jinfei races through the nearby streets, frantically questioning every passerby about a missing 3-year-old boy. A sharp vibration from her pocket signals an incoming technical communication. Tears stream down her face as she answers the call from Gu Shengyang, her voice trembling with administrative panic. She delivers the devastating news that young Tong has vanished into the urban chaos. Overwhelmed by guilt, Jinfei collapses to the pavement as Gu Shengyang and his mother arrive to assess the logistical crisis. Gu Shengyang's mother delivers a sharp verbal reprimand, questioning Jinfei's technical competence as a guardian. A sudden flash of tactical inspiration hits Jinfei, as she remembers the security cameras monitoring the hospital perimeter. The search efforts shift to the local police precinct as the group seeks official administrative assistance. Inside the station, Gu Shengyang's mother continues to vent her frustrations regarding the day's technical failures. An officer emerges from the back office, calling out for the family members of a child identified as Hee Tong. Gu Shengyang immediately steps forward to claim the child, ignoring the specific details of the officer's report. The officer provides the technical coordinates for the substation where the boy is currently being held for safety. A look of suspicion crosses the elder woman's face as she questions why the boy is using the surname He instead of Gu. Gu Shengyang maintains a strict professional focus, urging his mother to prioritize the retrieval of the child. She follows behind him, though her mind is clearly occupied with the logistical discrepancy of the child's name. Their vehicle screeches to a halt outside the substation, signaling the end of their frantic transit. Gu Shengyang spots Jinfei standing like a statue on the station steps, her eyes fixed on the entrance. He rushes toward her, calling her name to break her from her administrative trance. He gently questions her behavior, wondering why she hasn't entered the building to claim her son. Through the glass partition, they see Hee Yuan cradling the young boy with an unexpected level of technical care. Gu Shengyang's mother pushes past, demanding to know why Jinfei is hesitating outside the facility. Jinfei explains that she only just arrived after confirming the child's location via the hospital's surveillance footage. Inside, Tong's eyes widen with joy as he spots his mother through the technical barrier. The toddler scrambles out of the CEO's arms, his small feet pattering against the floor in a desperate sprint. Jinfei drops to her knees and gathers him into a fierce, protective embrace, whispering her apologies. Hee Yuan stands back, his sharp gaze dissecting the emotional scene, as he finally confirms Jinfei's role as the mother. Gu Shengyang and his mother step into the room, completing the technical assembly of the family unit. Watching them together, Hee Yuan draws a painful administrative conclusion, assuming Tong is the biological product of Jinfei and Gu Shengyang's union. Jinfei stands tall, offering a cold and professional thank you to the CEO before declaring their immediate departure. Hee Yuan adjusts his glasses, masking his internal conflict with a dismissive executive remark. Gu Shengyang lifts Tong into his arms, leading the group away from the man who once held their future. He casts a final, unreadable glance back at his rival as they exit the administrative zone. Alone once more, Hee Yuan's analytical mind fixates on the technical anomaly of the child's last name. Outside, Gu Shengyang's mother calls for the group to follow, her voice echoing through the quiet evening. She offers a thin smile, though her eyes betray a lingering technical doubt about the day's revelations. A dark, low humph escapes her as she processes the hidden implications of the child's true identity. As the city lights flicker outside the window, Jinfei finishes reading a bedtime story about a happy family to her son. She watches over little Tong as he drifts into a peaceful sleep, his rhythmic breathing the only sound in the quiet room. Resting her chin on her hand, Jinfei's gaze grows distant as she grapples with the heavy administrative burden of her secrets. Her mind drifts back to the sight of Hee Yuan holding Tong, a technical connection between father and son that she can no longer ignore. She reaches for her smartphone, the glowing screen illuminating her resolve to stop running from the inevitable truth. Jinfei places a call to assistant Qi Zheng, her voice steady as she requests a logistical favor that will change everything. The next morning, the imposing facade of the Haitian City Hospital stands as the site for a critical administrative encounter. Hee Yuan is wheeled through the hospital gardens, the medical staff noting a rare technical improvement in his spirits following his latest treatment. The silence of the garden is shattered by Tong's joyful shout as he recognizes the man in the wheelchair. The boy throws himself into He Yuan's arms with pure, innocent enthusiasm, a gesture the CEO meets with a look of genuine affection. He Yuan's cold executive mask melts into a soft smile as he questions the boy's unexpected arrival at the medical facility. Jinfei steps into view, catching her breath as she gently reminds her son to maintain a more controlled pace. Her eyes soften with professional concern as she asks He Yuan if the boy's sudden greeting caused him any physical discomfort. He Yuan looks up at her, his voice quiet as he acknowledges that she has finally chosen to face him directly. Gu Shengjiang enters the frame, his protective presence adding a layer of technical tension to the already complex gathering. Jinfei stands her ground, informing He Yuan that she has come to deliver a message of significant importance. Recognizing the need for a private administrative dialogue, Gu Shengyang lifts Tong up to give him a tour of the grounds. The attending physician takes his cue to depart, citing another patient's urgent logistical needs to clear the area. The group begins to disperse into the greenery, leaving the former partners alone in the sterile quiet of the garden. Jinfei breaks the silence, inquiring about the current status of his medical recovery with a calm, detached tone. He Yuan gestures to his wheelchair and medical bandages, a silent technical admission of his weakened state. Jinfei's expression hardens as she urges him to stop the administrative delays and proceed with the life-saving surgery he needs. They share a long, heavy look, the weight of 3 years of silence hanging between them like a physical barrier. To her surprise, He Yuan offers a quick, technical agreement, his hands resting calmly in his lap. He confesses that he previously saw no logistical point in living, having already finalized his last will and testament. His gaze shifts away as he admits that he has finally discovered a new technical reason to fight for his survival. A sudden rustle in the nearby trees suggests that their private conversation is being monitored by an unseen party. Jinfei looks down, admitting that she learned the truth from Qi Zheng and apologizing for her own past technical selfishness. He Yuan looks down with a look of administrative resignation, promising to respect her boundaries and stay out of her life. Tears well up in Jinfei's eyes as the emotional impact of his selfless sacrifice finally breaks through her professional exterior. She forces herself to turn away, offering a final wish for his surgical success before preparing to depart. He Yuan calls out to stop her, his expression tight with a request he is almost afraid to voice. He asks if she and Tong would be willing to visit him occasionally, framing the request as a simple matter of friendship. Across the lawn, Gu Shengyang continues to distract the young boy, unaware of the shifting dynamics behind him. A rare, hopeful smile touches He Yuan's lips as he receives a silent nod of administrative approval. From the shadows of the woods, a dark silhouette observes the scene, finally connecting the technical dots between He Yuan and the child. The mysterious figure grins with malicious intent, vowing to turn the CEO's life into a logistical nightmare. The upscale residential district of the city glows under the afternoon sun, masking the brewing storm within Jinfei's private life. Back at home, Jinfei enjoys a rare moment of peace, watching as little Tong proudly completes his latest architectural masterpiece with toy blocks. The tranquility is shattered by the insistent vibration of her smartphone, displaying an incoming call from Gu Shengyang. She picks up with a soft greeting, completely unaware that this simple conversation is about to pull her into a logistical nightmare. Tong's eyes light up with pure excitement at the mention of seeing Grandma, while Jinfei gently pats his head, though she feels a sudden pang of technical hesitation. Despite her lingering doubts, she agrees to the lunch meeting, hoping to maintain the fragile peace within the Gu family. They arrive at the imposing Gu mansion, a structure that exudes an air of cold, administrative authority. Tong bursts through the door with a joyful shout, eager to greet the woman he believes is his grandmother. Jinfei and Shengyang follow him into the dining room, only to find Gu's mother sitting in a chilling, stony silence. Shengyang asks about the delay in the meal, but his mother's face remains clouded with a look of profound administrative betrayal. Without a word of greeting, the elder woman slams a heavy brown envelope onto the table with a violent thud. Shengyang and Jinfei freeze, their professional composure instantly shattered by the sudden aggressive shift in the atmosphere. The contents of the folder reveal a technical death sentence, a birth certificate and DNA test results confirming Tong's true parentage. Gu's mother erupts in a fit of rage, screaming that she has been forced to play the role of a fool while raising another man's child. Jinfei's face drains of color as Shengyang desperately tries to mitigate the fallout of their shared secret. The matriarch's voice thunders through the room, ordering everyone to remain in place as she prepares to deliver her final technical judgment. She points a trembling finger at Jinfei, accusing her of calculated deception regarding the child's true surname, He. Jinfei lowers her head, accepting full administrative responsibility for the web of lies she spun to protect her son. The elder woman's fury boils over as she declares her absolute disgust at the presence of an illegitimate child in her household. Sensing the heavy distress, Tong reaches out to grasp the woman's hand in a desperate, innocent attempt to offer comfort. Gu's mother recoils as if burned, her face contorting with malice as she cruelly rejects the title of grandmother. In a shocking display of administrative cruelty, she swings her hand and delivers a sharp, stinging slap to the toddler's face. A heavy silence falls over the room as the woman stares at her own hand, While Shengyang bellows a protest against the physical assault of a child, Jinfei instantly drops to the floor, pulling her sobbing son into her arms to shield him from further harm. She tries to steady her voice, whispering a desperate lie that the grandmother didn't mean to cause him pain. Tong's cries echo through the mansion, his heart shattered by the sudden technical rejection from a person he loved. Overwhelmed by fear and confusion, the boy breaks free and bolts out of the room toward the safety of the gardens. Jinfei frantically scans the sprawling estate, her voice cracking as she calls out for her missing son. Her heart races with a new level of administrative panic as she realizes Tong has disappeared into the dense greenery. Just out of Jinfei's sight, a dark, sinister silhouette emerges from the shadows and clamps a hand over Tong's mouth, silencing his cries. Jinfei's voice echoes through the empty estate as she desperately calls out for Tong. Her foot catches on a small object hidden in the grass, nearly causing her to stumble. She stoops down to retrieve the item, her heart sinking as she recognizes her son's discarded shoe. Her hands tremble uncontrollably while she clutches the tiny footwear, the reality of the situation setting in. A wave of administrative dread washes over her as she realizes the boy didn't leave the premises voluntarily. A sudden tactical spark ignites in her eyes as she remembers the security cameras monitoring the mansion's perimeter. The search transitions to the local police precinct, where the fluorescent lights reflect the cold urgency of the situation. An officer points to a monitor showing a suspicious van that was spotted near the technical extraction point. He delivers a grim technical update, explaining that the vehicle's license plate was identified as a complete forgery. A sharp vibration from her pocket interrupts the heavy silence of the station. She stares at the glowing screen of her smartphone, which displays a high-priority call from an unknown number. Her pulse quickens as a familiar, malicious voice on the other end identifies herself as Zhao Jinru. Jinfei's eyes widen in absolute technical shock at the return of her longtime adversary. Miles away, Jinru monitors the unconscious boy, who lies bound and helpless in a derelict safe house. Her brother, Zhao Jingxuan, sits nearby, his disheveled appearance reflecting his descent into administrative ruin. In a sudden outburst of technical volatility, Jingxuan shatters a glass bottle against the floor. Jinru attempts to de-escalate the situation, warning her brother that harming a child will lead to permanent incarceration. Jingxuan violently shoves her away, his mind completely consumed by a desire for logistical vengeance. He snarls at his sister, blaming their current suffering on the past administrative interference of He Yuan. A dark, sadistic grin crosses his face as he prepares to inflict maximum emotional damage on his rivals. The heavy door is suddenly kicked off its hinges, flooding the dark room with a blinding tactical light. He Yuan stands in the doorway, his icy gaze fixed on Jingxuan as he delivers a final executive order to stand down. Jinru retreats into the shadows, her expression a complex mixture of fear and calculated betrayal. She glances down at her phone, acknowledging that her secret communication was the key to this administrative rescue. He Yuan stands firm in the center of the derelict room, his focus entirely on the high-stakes hostage situation. He makes a desperate offer, promising to comply with any administrative demand if the child is released unharmed. A sinister smile spreads across Jingxuan's face as he prepares to exploit the CEO's obvious vulnerability. He Yuan braces himself, his expression hardening as he prepares to endure whatever technical physical trial awaits him. Holding a blade to the boy's throat, Jingxuan issues a sadistic command for He Yuan to shatter glass bottles using only his own head. Without a moment's hesitation, He Yuan's boots grind against the dusty floor as he steps toward the designated area. His fingers brush against the cold glass of a discarded bottle, signaling the start of his self-inflicted ordeal. He lifts the heavy green bottle, his gaze fixed on the task with unwavering executive resolve. Jingxuan mocks him from the sidelines, questioning if the powerful CEO is finally feeling the weight of logistical fear. A sickening crack echoes through the safe house as the glass shatters against He Yuan's forehead. Blood begins to trickle down his face, yet his only concern remains the immediate safety of the young boy. Jingxuan's laughter fills the room as he orders He Yuan to continue the brutal performance or face a lethal outcome for the child. Tong's eyes fill with tears as he watches the man he knows as uncle. He suffer for his sake. He Yuan strikes again, the impact of the second bottle causing a spray of sharp glass shards to fly through the air. Despite his bound state, the toddler finds the strength to scream his defiance at the cruel captor. Jingxuan roughly silences the boy, his hand clamping down to suppress the child's vocal protests. In a fit of petty technical rage, he shoves the bound child onto the hard floor. He Yuan's voice cracks with administrative panic as he calls out his son's name. His protective instincts take over, his tone shifting to a low, dangerous warning for Jingxuan to back away from the boy. He Yuan's hand curls into a tight, white-knuckled fist as he reaches the limits of his professional restraint. He lunges forward with a sudden burst of tactical speed, delivering a crushing blow to Jingxuan's jaw. The antagonist is sent sprawling across the room, his technical dominance shattered in an instant. He Yuan drops to his knees, his hands trembling as he checks the boy for any immediate physical trauma. He gently lifts the child into his arms and turns toward the exit, prioritizing a swift logistical withdrawal. Unbeknownst to him, Jingxuan recovers with a jagged bottle in hand, fueled by a final surge of desperate malice. A second violent impact rings out as Jingxuan strikes the back of the CEO's head with lethal force. He Yuan's strength finally fails him, and he collapses onto the concrete, his vision fading into a crimson haze. Nearby, Tong remains still and silent, the administrative weight of the day's events having taken their toll on the child. Standing over his fallen rival, Jingxuan gloats about the definitive end of He Yuan's executive pride. A shadow falls across the threshold, signaling the arrival of an unexpected third party to the scene. Jinru stares at the carnage in horror, her breath hitching as she surveys the technical failure of her brother's plan. Jingxuan looks up with a twisted sense of accomplishment, claiming he has finally taught the CEO a lesson in humility. Jinru's voice trembles with rage as she delivers a stinging verbal rebuke to her own flesh and blood. Jinfei steps into the light, her eyes burning with a mother's fury as she prepares to reclaim what was stolen from her. The air in the safe house is thick with the scent of copper and the chill of impending tragedy. Jinfei's eyes widen in sheer horror as she takes in the sight of He Yuan's broken, bleeding form. She screams Jingxuan's name, her voice trembling with a mixture of raw fury and paralyzing fear for the man who saved her son. Jingxuan turns his head toward the intrusion, his gaze cold and completely detached from the administrative chaos he has unleashed. He sneers at his sister, accusing her of professional betrayal for leading their enemies straight to his secret doorstep. Jinru stands frozen in the background, her expression a mask of deep regret as she realizes the logistical damage she has helped cause. With a twisted grin, Jingxuan brandishes the jagged remains of the glass bottle, ready to deliver a final, lethal strike to his rival. A blinding beam of light suddenly cuts through the gloom, illuminating Jinfei's face as she prepares to intervene at any cost. She lunges forward with desperate speed, her technical focus entirely on reaching the side of her fallen partner. Her momentum is cut short as she stumbles and crashes onto the cold, unforgiving pavement of the safe house floor. The scene is instantly swarmed by officers with weapons drawn, their presence signaling a decisive end to the violent administrative standoff. Cornered and outmatched, Jingxuan slowly raises his hands, the technical weight of his crimes finally catching up to him. The lethal glass weapon falls from his grip, shattering against the concrete in a final, sharp echo of his ultimate defeat. Outside, the flickering blue and red lights of the patrol cars illuminate the perimeter of the derelict facility. A senior officer reports into his radio, confirming that the main suspect has been secured without further logistical loss of life. As he is led away in handcuffs, Jingxuan spits a final curse at Jinru, severing their technical bond as siblings forever. Jinru's composure finally breaks, her face staining with tears as she watches her brother be hauled toward a life behind bars. An officer places a firm, professional hand on her shoulder, guiding her away from the sight of her family's total administrative ruin. She buries her face in her hands, the crushing weight of her regret manifesting in silent, heavy sobs. Despite the day's horrors, Jinfei pulls the grieving woman into a supportive embrace, offering a brief moment of technical mercy. The narrative shifts to the imposing facade of Tianhai City Hospital, where the battle for He Yuan's survival continues. The sterile, quiet corridors of the intensive care unit underscore the extreme gravity of the CEO's medical condition. Rhythmic beeps from the advanced monitoring equipment provide the only technical pulse in the heavy, oppressive silence. He Yuan lies motionless beneath a thick layer of bandages, his life sustained by a complex array of high-tech medical machinery. The attending physician eventually emerges from the ward, his professional expression offering very little comfort to the waiting Jinfei. He delivers a grim technical assessment, warning that the severe head trauma may leave the patient in a persistent vegetative state. Jinfei stares back in stunned silence, her heart shattering as she processes the logistical finality of the doctor's words. The doctor urges her not to give up hope, suggesting that a constant emotional connection might trigger a technical miracle. She forces a thin, brave smile, masking her internal devastation as she requests a moment of administrative privacy to visit her son. Standing alone in the vast, empty hallway, the magnitude of her new reality begins to weigh heavily on her shoulders. She turns and walks slowly away from the doctor, her professional resolve finally beginning to buckle under the immense strain. A single hot tear escapes her eye, tracing a path of pure sorrow down her pale, tired cheek. Her lip trembles as she struggles to suppress the agonizing cries threatening to erupt from her throat. She looks back at the man who sacrificed his own safety for her child, his peaceful face a haunting reminder of what has been lost. Jinfei collapses against the wall in a fit of grief, weeping for the honesty she withheld and the future that now hangs by a technical thread. Within the depths of his unconscious mind, a young boy's foot strikes a puddle with a sharp splash, the water rippling with the reflection of a forgotten childhood. He Yuan looks around in a state of technical confusion, his hands pressed to his cheeks as he tries to process his surreal surroundings. A young, pink-haired girl appears before him like a ghost from the past, her eyes sparkling with an invitation to join her in play. He stares at her in disbelief, questioning why Jinfei has been reduced to the same administrative scale as his younger self. She ignores his logic, grabbing his arm with an infectious energy as she promises to reveal a secret, wonderful location. Their small hands interlock, a pure and innocent connection forming amidst the hazy, sun-drenched dreamscape of his mind. The two children race across the vibrant grass, their laughter blending with the distant, peaceful chirping of birds in the trees. They come to a halt at a stone fountain, where young Jinfei excitedly points out the colorful goldfish darting through the water. Hee-yuan gazes into the shimmering blue basin, a deep-seated technical familiarity tugging at the edges of his fragmented consciousness. Driven by a sudden, inexplicable impulse, he extends his hand toward the cool surface of the stone ledge. Jinfei's voice rings out with a sharp warning as she watches him lean dangerously far over the edge of the fountain. He strains to bridge the gap, his physical focus entirely consumed by the elusive movement of the fish beneath him. His footing suddenly gives way on the slick stone, sending him plummeting toward the watery depths with a startled cry of alarm. He sinks into a dark, aquatic void where fragments of a luxury car and a pink silhouette represent the transient, warm nature of his memories. In the waking world, the CEO's lips part as he whispers a final, desperate plea for his loved one to never leave his side. His eyes snap open as he jolts upright, finding himself resting on a peaceful, green lawn rather than a cold hospital floor. A familiar hand settles gently over his own, grounding him in this strange and surprisingly serene administrative reality. Jinfei looks down at him with a soft, concerned expression, asking if a nightmare was responsible for his sudden tactical distress. Hee-yuan remains silent, his brow furrowed as he tries to navigate the logistical gap between his recent trauma and this moment of peace. She lets out a lighthearted chuckle, assuming his stunned silence is just another layer of his usual professional stoicism. She reveals that the medical staff confirmed his memory is perfectly intact, playfully accusing him of trying to fool her with another elaborate game. Hee-yuan presses a hand to his temple, his mind reeling from the technical inconsistency of her words and his own fractured timeline. He finally decides to stop fighting the confusion, interlacing his fingers with hers in a quiet gesture of administrative surrender. Jinfei smiles warmly, noting that he seems to have developed a recent passion for playing these mysterious behavioral games. The pair sits in a tranquil, heavy silence, their figures framed against a vast, open sky as the boundaries of his reality continue to shift and blur. Hee-yuan and Jinfei sit together on a sun-drenched lawn, lost in a serene review of their shared history. Visions of a grand wedding dance through his mind, capturing the moment they celebrated their professional and personal union. Their expressions radiate a deep, administrative peace as they reflect on the journey that brought them here. The peaceful atmosphere is interrupted by a tall, familiar figure approaching them from across the greenery. A grown-up Tong stands before them, his sharp suit reflecting the successful executive he has eventually become. Hee-yuan stares in technical disbelief, struggling to reconcile this man with the toddler he just rescued. Jinfei lets out a playful laugh, clearly amused by the CEO's genuine logistical confusion. She leans down to tease him, pointing out that time has naturally progressed for all of them. Her eyes shine with a warmth that transcends the boundaries of this surreal dreamscape. Tong steps forward to embrace his mother, his tone lighthearted as he asks what took her so long to return. The two share a brief, innocent moment of family bonding while Hee-yuan watches from the sidelines. Jinfei turns back to Hee-yuan with a soft invitation, urging him to finally come home with them. Hee-yuan slowly pushes himself up from the grass, ready to follow his family toward a new administrative horizon. His boots press firmly into the soft turf as he takes his first steps toward a definitive future. The three of them come together in a powerful group hug, cementing their technical bond as a complete family. A look of ultimate executive satisfaction settles on Hee-yuan's face as he cherishes this moment of unity. He shares a final, knowing glance with Jinfei, acknowledging the strength of their partnership. A brilliant, ethereal light begins to envelop him, signaling the end of his subconscious journey. Hee-yuan walks toward the blinding glow, leaving the dream behind to face the reality of his recovery. Back in the sterile hospital room, a single rose petal falls onto the white tabletop. Little Tong sits at a nearby table, his small hand moving a crayon with intense technical focus. Jinfei keeps a constant, vigilant watch over the unconscious CEO, whose head is still wrapped in protective bandages. Tong excitedly presents his latest artistic creation, eager to share his progress with his mother. The drawing depicts three colorful figures standing together, representing his hope for a unified family. He holds the paper high, his eyes wide with the innocent belief that his art can heal his father. Jinfei gently strokes her son's hair, offering him the emotional support he needs during this clinical trial. The boy reaches out to touch Hee-yuan's hand, quietly asking when his father will finally wake up. Jinfei offers a brave, optimistic smile, her administrative resolve remaining unbroken despite the long wait. Hee-yuan remains perfectly still, his features composed in a deep, medically induced slumber. A sudden, microscopic twitch of his finger signals a break in his long technical silence. His hand shifts slightly against the bedsheet, confirming that his cognitive functions are finally returning. Time passes, and the family is finally reunited in health, standing together as they face a bright and prosperous future.